Boom, boom, boom. So we are going to need shine a little light. Shine a little light on this man. We need all in your face. We need all in your face. All right. And boom, boom, boom. Everything stays. Yes, it does. All right. Am I on the right one? Yes, October, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. What's up, girlie? Oh, just right now from work?
Yeah, about like 5 minutes ago.
How was your day? Okay. Well, I just wanted to call you to say hi. I'm getting ready to teach a class. So I will. You'll be up for 3 hours, 3 more hours?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll call you back.
All right.
All right. Love you. Bye.
Hi, CJ.
Good evening, Karen. How are you?
Good evening. I'm good. How are you?
Just getting a quick moment with my little girl.
Oh. Sorry, I'm late. I went to go get a COVID test.
No worries.
Yeah.
Are you positive?
No, I don't think so. It's just because we're going out of town. So.
Oh, okay.
Because we're seeing another family. We just want to make sure because we have little kids. And
Do
stuff.
are the results instant?
So this place is really good. Like this company called Color has locations throughout the Bay, and you can literally just go there and then like I got results within like 36 hours was the quickest.
Oh,
and they
nice.
just text it to you.
36 hours.
Yeah.
There's one in Oakland that I'm told that you get your results in 30 minutes.
30 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh no, I haven't gone to that one.
I don't know for sure. I haven't been there, but I used to box and I belonged to a gym and with other fighters, and so that they all know because they have to go get tested or whatnot. So that's what I've been told. I'm gonna look into it. And supposedly it's free too. It's free in Alameda County.
Yeah, it was free.
Okay. See, I live in Contra Costa County. It's not free in our county.
I mean, even if you don't live in Alameda County, you can go.
Yeah, that's I'm gonna drive over there, but I'm okay with it because I spend enough money in the city of Oakland and in the county of Alameda. I've paid my taxes.
Right.
So. Yeah. All right. So how do you feel? How are you feeling about things?
I'm feeling pretty confident. Like I'm like, things are sticking, I think. Like I keep like writing down all the processes that I know so far and making sure I have 36, and I think I got it.
How far can you get? Let's try it.
36.
Let's make that our recap this morning. Let's see. Let's see how many processes you can rattle off.
Okay. Develop project charter, identify stakeholders, develop project management plan, plan scope management, collect requirements, define scope, create WBS, plan schedule management.
Mhm.
Activities.
Close.
Plan schedule management. Define activities. Sequence activities, estimate activity duration, develop schedule, plan cost management, estimate costs, determine budget, cost, plan resource management. That's it, right? Plan resource management.
There's one before.
Oh,
Consistency. All about consistency.
Plan quality management.
Then
plan resource management. Then plan communications management.
Well, before we plan communication management, there's something about the resources we got to do too. After we plan resource management, we got to estimate.
Estimate activity resources.
Good.
Resources. Plan communications management. Plan risk management. Identify risks. Perform qualitative risk analysis. Perform quantitative risk.
Qualitative and quantitative. Before you can qualify and quantify, maybe I missed it. After you plan risk management, what do you do?
Identify risks.
Okay.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then perform qualitative and quantitative, and then plan risk response. Plan procurements management. And then plan stakeholder engagement.
Perfect.
And then executing.
Okay.
Right.
What's the first one in execute?
Direct and manage project work, manage project knowledge, manage quality, manage communications. Acquire resources. Manage team, develop team.
Backwards, but that's okay.
Okay, manage, develop. D goes before M. Okay, resources. Manage costs. Is that one?
Nope.
Oh.
So you got
cost.
quality,
There's no cost.
you got
There's no
resources.
Cost.
You got quality and resources. After that, the next knowledge.
Manage communications. Conduct procurements.
Yes. Well, no. Before you manage communications.
Risk. Implement risk response.
Good.
Conduct procurements and manage stakeholder engagement.
Beautiful.
Where we left off.
That's it. That's all of them. All right. That's pretty good. That's really, really good.
Yes.
That's really good. Now, here's how this will help you. Just knowing the names of the processes, just knowing them in order. There's something about, it's kind of like, okay, it's when you go to college and you go to get your degree, at the end and you got to take your senior classes. If you didn't finish one of those senior classes, no one can say that you don't have the knowledge of a graduate, right? Just because you didn't finish one class. But there's something to be said about completing a goal and moving on and getting that degree. And it's the same thing with these processes. There's something to be said about being able to memorize them and know them that just automatically gives you confidence and helps you with the exam. So will it help you for all 200 questions? No, maybe 30 or 40, but that is the difference between passing and failing. So, and it's also one of those things where just knowing the processes too, when you can call them out and you're like, okay, well, for an executing, then we couldn't be monitoring, controlling. I couldn't have developed a work performance report if we're planning, or, I couldn't get data if we're not executing. That's how these things will help you. It's like there's certain little things that you can only do in a specific process group, and then knowing the processes themselves, you automatically know which process group you're talking about, and then that helps you out as well.
Yeah.
All right, really, really, really happy to see you do that. So we did complete all of planning. I couldn't remember last time. I was like, did we complete stakeholder engagement? But we did. So.
No, we didn't.
Oh, we didn't.
Yeah, we just stopped because it was already like exactly time.
Okay, and we were a little ahead. Okay, I thought so. I thought there was one more. Okay.
Yeah.
So we did everything from in execution. We started with directly manage a team. So instead of doing like a story recap, let's just talk about what you get in those processes to remember. So when you directly manage the team, you're going to get deliverables. You're going to get data and deliverables. It's the only process that you get data and deliverables from. Okay. And then you're going to manage project knowledge. So as the team is doing their work, well, let me back it up. When you directly manage a team, you're going to have meetings. You're going to use what we call the project management information system. And you're going to use your interpersonal and team skills to bring everybody together and collect the data from them. And whatever deliverables that they produce, you're going to check it. Okay. And that's data that you capture yourself as well, right? So that's the only place you get data. Then you're going to manage the knowledge on the team. So there's the explicit knowledge and the tacit knowledge. Don't forget about those two. And you're going to make sure, let me close my door. You're going to make sure that you capture lessons learned in a lessons learned register. Remember that term, register, living, breathing document. You're going to ensure that, you help people, figure out things that they didn't know just based on the knowledge that you learned from this project. Okay. You're also going to, when it says manage knowledge, you're also going to identify areas of improvement, whether it's training programs, or maybe you say, you know what, I want to conduct a brown bag with my team today. Like we're going to have a team lunch this week, right? Something like that. But you're going to create scenarios that's going to give the team opportunities to learn new skills, new things, and discuss new ideas to share with each other, whatever that may be. Then you're going to go manage quality, right? So as the team is doing the work, and keep in mind, all this is happening in executing, even though we're doing them in order by knowledge area, all of this is happening. So while you're executing, you're also managing quality, AKA performing quality assurance, meaning you are sort of auditing the team's processes. You're saying, hey, are you guys following the processes that we put out, that we mapped out for you, that we trained you on? Are you using all the tools that we gave you to use? Are you utilizing your time effectively, all this additional time that we gave you? All that's part of the cost of quality, preventative cost, right? Are you doing all of those things so that way we produce deliverables? We assure that if we follow the plan, we should produce deliverables with a high level of quality, meaning they will meet their requirements with consistency, okay? And the outcome of that process will be some evaluation report, right? It may not be test cases because we're not testing the deliverable itself, but it may be a test of, today I'm going to go watch the workflow of everybody. Today at my McDonald's franchise that I own, I'm going to walk in and I'm going to make sure that everybody's saying, hello, welcome to McDonald's, may I take your order? I'm going to make sure that, they're giving 2 packets of ketchup and 2 napkins, not 3. Right. So that's the idea there. And then someone from outside my team, meaning someone from corporate, is going to come and audit my team. And now that becomes a quality audit. So when I audit the team, since I'm part of the team, it's just quality assurance. But when somebody else comes and they do it, it's a structured independent review. That will be a quality audit. Okay. And Then you're going to turn around and you're going to acquire your resources. And now when you acquire resources, it's time to negotiate. There's no more networking. There's no more, hey, Karen, I think I'm going to need 2 of your people. It's, hey, we discussed this already. Are they ready? We'd like to onboard them, train them, get them going, right? It's a negotiation. It's a time to, like, the rubber meets the road, so to speak. Okay, so remember that we negotiate when we acquire resources. When we plan, that's when we network. Right, so we're going to get those resources on the team, the people, the materials, the machines, the supplies, all of that good stuff. Then we are going to develop the team, right? Now that we got all these resources, all these people, we got a new building or a new room. We've got new tools. The environment gets updated. Remember that. We acquire resources. We're going to update the environment. Now we're going to develop the team. We're going to update the environment as well. We're going to do team training. We're going to go on... we're going to do team building exercises. We're not going to do the dinner where everybody sits at one end and people sit on the other end, and then people on this end and this end never get to talk. We're going to do stuff like we're going to do go-kart racing, and we're going to do paintball, although legal always shuts me down with that. So we have to do laser tag, right? But we're going to take the people that are always eating lunch together and hanging out. I'm going to break them up and make them team captains. And then each of those people now have 4 or 5 people on their team. We're all going to compete. And in the end, that group of 4 or 5 that you broke up to make team captains now becomes a group of 6 or 7, because since they were all split up, 1 or 2 or 3 of those people now made a relationship with somebody else and said, yeah, we eat lunch every day. Come on with us. And now that little tribal knowledge that was just only with the 5 or 6 people is now 7 or 8 people. And so now your team is better for it. Also, because you put people in a situation where they can really compete, you see a different side of people. Some of the B personalities are a little more laid back. They will sort of jump out, and you'll see that when people compete, they'll cheat and they'll do everything they can to win. It's like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know you were that way. But now that people have shown them a different side of themselves, now the team's more cohesive. Now we're more on a personal level. Now we can really work. Now we can really, have each other's backs, and we know what we're thinking. We're doing stuff. So we're going to develop the team in that way. It's not just training, but it's team building. It's and it's cross training as well, not just training, but cross training. Okay. Then we're going to manage the team. Now we're going to look at individuals. We're going to focus on those people that need a little extra love. Some people need a little extra love because they need more skill set to do the work. Some people need a little extra love just because something's going on in their life, right? Maybe personally, professionally, whatever it may be. But we're going to think about all the individuals. We're going to manage conflicts. Sometimes we will have to withdraw or avoid the conflict and just say, you know what? I don't have time for this today. I'm going to leave it alone. Sometimes we have to smooth things over with our people and say, hey, let's grab a beer. Let's grab lunch. Come on, guys. Let's forget about that. Sometimes you're going to have to force it. You have to force it, right? There's other times you're going to have to get people to compromise, and each party will give something up. And then there are times where you will get people to compromise and reconcile. Excuse me, not compromise, to collaborate and reconcile, and they'll work together. And you'll think about your team as they develop from the forming, storming, norming, performing, and then adjourning. The team disbands and they move on. So you'll think about that and you'll say, okay, great. Now that I've been able to develop my team and I'm managing my team, now let me go and manage communication. So you're going to start sending stuff out, distributing information. You're making sure that the right information gets to the right people with the right level of granularity, in the right format, with the proper cadence, whether that's weekly, monthly, daily. Hold on. Poppy, please. I know it sounds beautiful, but it's so distracting. I love it, but maybe tomorrow morning. Okay. Okay. And so after we distribute information and we get all the right information to the right people, the right format, right level of granularity, right cadence, all of that stuff, then we are going to look at our risk and we're make sure we're going to implement all the risk responses. So if we're going to avoid things, we're making sure we're avoiding any threats, do something new, right? If we are looking at mitigating any threats, we're going to take some action or some activity to ensure that we minimize the probability and or the outcome. If we are transferring a risk, we're going to make sure we're shifting that to some third party. Did we execute these insurance policies? Are SLAs in order? And if we're going to accept the risk, we're either going to put contingency reserves aside, money aside, and actively accept, or we're going to put it on the watch list and passively accept. And then we can escalate all threats. And if there's opportunities, we are going to exploit them, which means we're going to change what we're doing to fully focus on that opportunity, right? That's exploiting. If we're going to share in an opportunity, we're going to introduce a third party because we're not able to do it on our own. If we're going to enhance an opportunity, then we're going to take actions, just like mitigating a threat. We're going to take actions to increase the probability and or impact. And we can, of course, accept the opportunity and we can just say, well, put money aside, do some research, do it later, or passively accept it and say, you know what, that's just not for us. Put it on the list. And if it's for us one day, maybe we'll pursue it. And of course, we can also escalate opportunities to people. Hey, did you know that this opportunity popped up? Then we're going to think about conducting procurements. Now, we're going to think about how in planning, we already created our procurement documents, which would be SOW, which would be RFP, RFQ, RFI, all right, request for proposal, request for qualifications in some senses, but for PMI, it's request for quote. So if you think of RFQ as request for qualifications, that's actually RFI for PMI, request for information. RFQ is request for quote, tell me how much it will cost. Or we have the RFQ, RFI, request for information, RFP. And then we have the IFB. Sometimes PMI will use that term, invitation for bid. Say, we'll invite you to bid on this, right? You don't have to submit a full-scale proposal, but we want you to bid on this product, okay, or this project, this activity, whatever it may be. We'll think about the agreements that we had, LOAs, MOUs, memorandum of understanding, right? Letters of agreement, statements of work, SOW, contracts themselves, AKA agreements. All of these PMI sees as agreements. All right, so all those are agreements. We'll take those into account. And we will make sure that we provide support to our procurement team because we are not responsible for executing those contracts and negotiating procurements. Someone in procurement or legal typically is. So that's kind of the idea there. We'll conduct procurements, meaning that we'll make sure that they have everything that they need to do to get us the best product at the best price at the best available time. Then we will go on and we will manage stakeholder engagement. So we're going to go back and look at the stakeholder register and look at all the people who had a high level of power, high level of interest, or high level of power but not much interested, or no power, no interest, or a lot of power or a lot of interest but no power. And all those people that we analyze using either the salience model or that stakeholder grid, whether they were for the project or against the project, we are then going to come up with strategies for keeping them engaged, right? This isn't going to be strategies for how they would likely respond. We did that analysis when we developed the stakeholder register. Now we're going to say, how do we keep these people, participating and staying abreast of the project and staying on top of it? And so that's this process here. Let's jump in. Oh, let me share the screen. All right. And let's swap this. Okay, which screen are you seeing?
The double one, the double slides.
It was right the first time. Go figure. All right. Can I change it? Of course you can't. All right. Let's escape. Escape from Babylon. Come back here. New share. Wait, stop the share. Okay. Share. And then boom, play it. Okay, what do you see?
Same thing.
Two slides.
Double
Okay,
screen.
so now, where is the little zoom? Where is it? There's a little arrow and it's not popping up for me. So let me try this way. All right, let's just share a desktop then. Double slides?
No, looks good.
Okay. Whew. All right. Plan stakeholder engagement. All right, so our goal here is to develop an approach on how to engage each stakeholder. But notice how we said customize, because everybody has different needs. So that's what we want to do. And it's based on their expectations as well. So a lot of this comes from the stakeholder register, a lot of the information we get there, and now we make a plan.
Wait.
I just want to mention again, when we went through planning,
Mm-hmm.
we plan. Wait a second, we are not on plan stakeholder engagement. We're way past this. All right, we are on manage stakeholder engagement. Okay, how's that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now we want to make sure that everything that we did when we planned stakeholder engagement is going to be implemented, right? So it's all about increasing support and minimizing resistance. And I mentioned earlier in our previous courses, you know, it's all about making sure that especially the people who are happy, those are the dangerous ones, because you got to keep them happy. The people who are unhappy, we just want to find them out in the beginning. I'm not worried if you're unhappy in the beginning. I'm okay with that because I have an opportunity to turn you. But the people who are happy now, I'm worried about you because I got to keep you happy. All right. So that's kind of the idea when we're monitoring stakeholder engagement. It's like, are these people participating? Are they aligned with what's going on? You know, we got to address their issues in a productive manner and give them feedback on what's going on, especially with changes. So stakeholders have the biggest ability to influence a project success, and it's the greatest early on in the project. It starts to decrease because as we deliver and as things are set, it's like, well, there's not much we can do now. So for the most part, in the beginning, stakeholders have a lot of power, but it doesn't mean that it completely goes away. If you're the sponsor and you're paying for this project and we're towards the end and I want to change and I will pay you and give you more time, you're going to take the money and you're going to do the work. All right. Or I shouldn't say you're going to take it, but most project firms are like, as long as you sign a change order, we're willing to do it. So it's not that their influence completely goes away, but it's just that, you know, in the natural cycle of things, as we move on, you know, the influence kind of wanes. So here's all the ITTOs. Okay, so change request tends to be the biggest thing when you're managing the engagement of people. Well, can you email me in the full link or the full document instead of sending me a link? Can we not have to meet every time? Like that's what you end up getting as you start to make sure that people are engaged. Then they give you a change for how they best want to be engaged, which is okay. Please tell me. All right. So we're going to take the plan, we look at these tools and techniques. First, we'll start with the outputs. So change request, any project and product scope, obviously, but then any changes to our approach. And that could be initiated by the stakeholder themselves. That's right. My mouse doesn't work. I need to load up the. All right. So the stakeholders may engage the change themselves. And so in that case, we'll update our approach within the project management plan. And then any documents that get changed, it's an output here because obviously how we're going to deal with the stakeholders, we'll update the register. Because by the way, if our plan for how we engage, how we like, when I say engage, like how we're going to talk to people, how we're going to get them to participate. If that changes, then we update the change management, the stakeholder management plan. But if we're changing strategy for a stakeholder, a specific stakeholder, it's not about engaging them, but it's just how we're going to deal with them in general, then that means we would update the stakeholder register. All right, so just keep that in mind. There's two different documents for PMI. If it's the how we're going to do it, then that's the plan. If it's the what we're going to do, then that's the register. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, so we need the stakeholder engagement plan, obviously, the communication management plan, obviously, because that tells us how we're going to communicate, and the risk management plan. And then other documents that we need, the change log, of course, it contains the changes that you need to go and either get approval from these stakeholders or let them know what's happening. The issue log documents stakeholder issues. While that's an input, again, that issue log is not something that you'd really share with people. That's more of an internal document for you. You might not even share that with the whole team, maybe just a project management team or a small group within there. Right. So that's the issue log. Take the register and the lessons learned, how, what was ineffective, what worked with people and what didn't work. Right. We'll take that into account. Clear and consistent communication and conflict negotiation skills. That's pretty much the tool and the technique. Now, that's not a sanctioned tool and technique for PMI. So they're going to say, well, each stakeholder receives communication in a form best suited for them. So use your interpersonal skills. And that's where we see conflict management. And you remember that withdrawal, smooth. Cultural awareness is part of that. Being able to negotiate. Have you taken a negotiation class?
No.
You should.
I need to. Yeah.
You're a member of PMI, and they do them at least once a quarter, if not maybe sometimes 2 times a quarter. So sometimes 4 to 5 times a year. They usually do them at a dinner, and with COVID, I'm not sure how that's happening. I don't know if I haven't seen it advertised as a virtual event, but the guy that does it has been doing it for PMI, at least in the San Francisco Bay Area chapter, for a long time. He's really good. And he teaches you how to make someone else give their position up first. And that is the art of negotiation. It's not that I need to win. It's sort of like, if you're going to buy something and there's an unknown price, do you want to just give your price and say $50 and someone's like, oh yeah, sure, that works? Or do you want to make the other person tell you 30 and you're like, 25, oh, 27. It's like, cool, I was going to spend 50. So it's all about making the other person give up their side first. That's really the art of negotiation. And then observation and conversation. All right. So that's sort of, how's the team doing? Are they working well together? This is like you working the room. If we're all back co-located and in pre-COVID times, then it's you going through and here's the best example is I worked at an office in Polycom, and one of the execs there, when she would show up in the morning, good morning to everybody, good morning. She'd walk to everybody's office, good morning. Literally the first 20 minutes is sort of her making a round, just talking to people, chatting, good morning, how are you doing? How's your day? You knew she was coming, you could hear her walk around, and then she'd get to work. And when she would leave, be the same thing, drape her coat over her arm and walk, goodbye, have a good day. Oh, I won't see you next week. I know you're taking PTO. Say hi to your kids, like whatever it was. She just made it a point to always ingratiate herself with everyone, whether they worked directly for her or not. And because of that, people would walk through walls for this lady. And she also had to post on what was always going on the floor on the department because she just knew. And that's really what observation and conversation is about. If you're going to manage the engagement level of people, then you got to know that. Right? It's not observation and conversation with the stakeholder themselves. It's you observing like what's going on around you and then just making small talk with people to see, how they feel about what's going on. Meeting and ground rules. That's another tool and technique, right? Having meetings and then creating the ground rules. So a focused meeting. And I mean, that's pretty straightforward in our world, right? Make sure we have an agenda, let people know why we're here, what our goals are, what's the objective. That's the SMART meetings, right? Specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely. Have you heard of that?
I don't know the strategy, but yes, I
Okay,
know those
so
are
SMART.
important.
So now every time you do your meetings, anything that you do, whether it's a meeting, whether it's a project plan, whatever it is, you can use this to make sure that you've kind of covered these 5 areas. Am I doing something specific? That's the S. Can I measure what I'm doing? Is there some metric? Is there an outcome? All right. Sorry, specific, measurable. The other part of SMART, attainable. Can we actually do this, or is this pie in the sky? If it's pie in the sky, then nothing really matters, right? Is it actually attainable? Is it attainable, right? Is it relevant? Is it part of the scope? Is it going to drive progress? Is it going to help the team members, right? And is it timely? Must we do it right now? Should we be waiting a week, or should we be doing it right now, right? So that's the SMART acronym, and you can always use that to almost, you're even if you're in a meeting and someone's talking about a specific thing, and sometimes you'll have these meetings and the teams will start going off on a tangent. All you have to do is sit back and think, okay, specifically, what are we talking about? And then how do we measure this outcome? Can we actually achieve this? Is it relevant to what we're doing? Okay, then right now we ought to be talking about it. Or maybe we table it for later, right? That's the SMART acronym. Hopefully that helps you. And those are the things that you do. Even ground rules, That goes back to the team charter. But in this case, this is ground rules for your stakeholders. Like, don't be afraid, like colleague to colleague, don't be afraid to say, like, even to the sponsor, you can say it with a smile. You know, I expect you to show up to all the project review meetings, right? You're telling me the project's great now and you have full support. Okay, if I have your full support, then I know that you won't miss any of these, right? And they'll always kind of laugh and chuckle, ha, 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 yeah, yeah, yeah. But you know what? You've planted a seed. You've planted a seed, and the time that they're ready to cancel on one of those or not show up, or when they're going to tell their assistant to do that, they're going to think twice. They're going to think twice. They might still do it, but they'll think twice. So plant seeds if you can. And that's kind of the idea of managing stakeholder engagement. So here is our last case study of this process group.
Okay.
All right. So in addition to the stakeholder engagement plan, which subsidiary project plan did John not use as an input to the managed stakeholder engagement process?
B.
And by the way, this is classic of PMI. Did John not use? Right? Just that, rather than saying what didn't John use, they'll put that in the middle of the sentence. What subsidiary project plan did John not use? So like you just goes back to the 72 seconds. Slow down, take your time, because it's really easy to to gloss over that. All right, you said B?
Yeah.
Why B?
I am guessing because there are no scheduled processes in executing process group.
That's true. That's actually true. That's actually true. And another way to see that's one way to help you, and I'm not against that. And another way is to say that, well, if I'm thinking about how I engage stakeholders, how I communicate with them would be important. Obviously, the stakeholder engagement plan would be important, and how I go about managing risk would likely be important.
Yeah, I thought those two.
Okay. As stakeholders' ability to influence a project increases or decreases as a project progresses.
B.
And which project document did John utilize to record and communicate problems and concerns?
A.
See, I would like them to do on the actual PMP exam. This will be harder because you have A, issue log, you have B, risk register, you have C, change log, and then you'll have D. They'll probably put an issue register to see if you remember the difference between an issue log and an issue register. And that, oh, there is no difference because there's not such thing as an issue register.
Mhm.
But, that's, so the exam questions will be slightly harder from that sense. They'll give you more options that seem very, very close to what it could be.
Okay.
Okay, so you got all these answers right. Now on to monitoring and controlling. So this process group is all about variance analysis. And here's what I mean by that. We are here today. We had a plan where we started, and that plan said that wherever it was, we started, and now we're here. So based on the plan, are we where we should be? Are we ahead of schedule or behind schedule, right? And then based on the plan and how we're performing, can I now forecast what the project will look like next week, next month, next year? Okay. So it's variance analysis, like looking at a point in time, measuring against the plan to say, how are we doing and how will we do? All right. So that's what this whole process is. I want you to note that direct and manage the team is where we get data from. And that becomes an input to perform, change control, validate scope, control schedule, control costs, quality, resources, monitor communications, risk, procurement, and stakeholder engagement. Right? It does not become an input to monitor and control project work. It's only an input to the other processes in monitoring and controlling. So you get work performance data as an input, and as an output from all of these processes, perform integrated change control, validate scope, control scope, all of these processes as an output give you work performance information. Now, I've told you this already. I spent a little bit of time, but just again. Now, that work performance information then becomes an input to monitor and control project work, and the output of that process becomes a work performance report. That work performance report becomes an input to manage communications, and the output of that process then becomes a project communication. Right? The output of that process is a project communication. So really what I'm trying to highlight for you is that right now, with aside from monitor and control project work, and it's the first one we're going to talk about, this is the only process that you get a work performance report. All right, this is you. Remember, this is the glue of your project, the integration knowledge area. So you are the one that works with the sponsor to develop a charter. You are the one that works with the team to develop a project management plan. You are the one that directs and manages your team and manages knowledge. You are the one that monitors and controls the project and performs integrated change control. And you are the one that closes the project. This is heavily PM driven. All of these processes here. You may work with so many different team members who sometimes you may even assign the lead to do any of this. You may do some of this, but you may have a quality lead, right? You might have a test lead. So you might have some people that are helping you this, right? We're not responsible for the negotiations and things like that, even acquiring a team. Maybe some people might help you there. But then this process, monitor and control project work, is all on you. So the data that we get from direct and managed project work is going to go to all the other monitoring controlling processes, data in, information out. All of that information is when you're going to sit down for a while and you're going to say, all right, let me put together a chart on the, the budget, the schedule, the scope, bugs, whatever it may be, input it in the Jira, produce some reports. And then that work performance report is what it is, just a report sitting on your laptop, sitting in a folder somewhere. That's not a project communication until you actually email it or upload it to Confluence or SharePoint or OneDrive, until you have a conversation with people and report it out. Then that becomes a project communication that we would have pushed out, put somewhere for folks to pull, had an interactive form, whether it was written, verbal, formal, or informal. Okay. So now we're going to jump into this group. So our key outputs here, the work performance information that comes from 4-6 down, those are outputs. And then the work performance report, the work performance information is the input to monitor, control project work, and we get a report. So those are the key outputs. And then when we control schedule, control cost, also control scope, these three processes are actually the same in PMI's eyes. This is earned value management. However, we don't get scope forecast. We just get schedule and cost forecast, right? There's no such thing as the scope forecast. That's really just the schedule. How much have we done? How much is left? Okay. And so now we can identify where the plan needs to change, all right? Or where any corrective or preventative actions need to take place. And so we also get change requests. Those are outputs from almost every process. Remember, when we're planning, we potentially could get change requests when we're planning as well, right? So that becomes an input to perform integrated change control, and then the output will be approved change request. Okay. And then we also want to objectively, meaning we just want to test, no emotion about it. We want to test and inspect our deliverables. That is an output from control quality. Every time we test a deliverable, we get a verified deliverable. That verified deliverable becomes an input to validate scope, which is where we get the client to sign off. And then the output is an accepted deliverable. So deliverables are produced. They get verified after they're tested. They get validated after they've been accepted. Okay. So let's look at monitoring, controlling. All right. So we're going to look at this process group, these two processes, this knowledge area and these two processes in the monitor and controlling process group. By the way, what are the 5 process groups?
Initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, and controlling, and closing.
Beautiful. Okay. And what's in the scope baseline? What 3 documents make up the scope baseline?
Scope statement, WBS, and WBS dictionary.
What is the schedule baseline? In your own words.
Project schedule.
No. Think about this. In your project, in your actual project that you're running now, do you give the customer the schedule, or do you give them your full schedule?
No.
What do you give them?
Like a general milestone or timeline.
That's the best way for me to explain of what the schedule baseline is for PMI. It's a modified version that gets approved. So they've approved that and they're like, yeah, these milestones. But if you were to give them your full schedule on everything that's happening, well, if Johnny decides to be sick today, and so now we're going to do his work on Friday instead of Thursday, that's now a change that you would need to get submitted and approved by them. That's not something we do. So we have the project schedule that we use with the team, very detailed, and then the schedule baseline modified and approved version. What's the cost baseline?
The project budget.
What type of reserves does the cost baseline contain?
Contingency reserves.
Good. CNC. And who owns the cost baseline?
The project manager.
What type of reserves does the project budget contain?
The management reserves.
And who owns that?
Management.
Perfect. So for the exam, project managers do not own the project budget. The cost baseline is not the project budget. The cost baseline is what we manage to achieve the project. And then we don't know how much reserves management's willing to put in. And the reserves plus the cost baseline, plus that little reserves, that makes up the full project budget. Just
Okay.
keep that in mind for the exam. We don't own the project budget. Even on in the actual practice, that's what we call it. For the exam, it's the cost baseline. That's what we manage. Okay, so good. Just want to double check on those. So now we're in the integration knowledge area. We're looking at monitor and control, perform integrated change control. Let's jump in. So monitor and control project work. So this gives us an insight into the health of the project because we're going to track, review, and we're going to report on actual versus expected, right? Actual, expected, you know, place on a plan. Here's where we're at and here's where we expect. All right, so we're going to evaluate success in achieving the performance objectives as defined in the project management plan, which would be your 3 baselines. And we're going to do this by documenting the progress, analyzing how effective we've become, and then forecasting how much of the budget we're going to use and how long it's going to take. We'll identify any risks that are there. All right, so we'll see monitor risk. If I go back here, monitor risk. This is like identify, qualify, quantify, and develop a risk response, all smashed into one process. This is where we're looking at the risk responses that we've implemented, and then we're looking for new risk. And then when we look for that new risk, we don't go through, you know, we're not going to go back to planning. Well, I mean, you know, we jump back and forth between process groups all the time. But now that we find a single risk, now we're just going to go ahead and qualify it, quantify it, and come up with a response. We just do all of those at once. Okay. So here in integration control, right, so that's what's happening here. But in this case, we're just monitoring. Whoops. We're just monitoring. And so we're going to create work performance reports. We're going to get requests for change. So what's going to happen here. And these are critical tools that we use to maintain engagement and encourage action. So your reports should be designed to do that. They should be designed to either make people happy with the progress, or they should make people say, oh, we need to do something here, right? It should force some action. So here's our tools and techniques, and we see the work performance report is the specific or the unique output to this process. We may get requests for change, updates to our approach, updates to our documents. So let's look at these tools and techniques and how they're used on those inputs. So we're trying to get a work performance report that summarizes what we've done. And I'm sure you're familiar with status reports. We will do earned value management today. So you'll see that. Will we get to it today? We should. Oh, we may not. It's only 3 hours tonight. Trendline and forecast. What's the line doing? Is it going up or is it going down? Okay. Reserve burn down charts. You know, this is sort of like, can look at it 2 ways. How much money do we have left in our risk reserves, and how much risk are we still exposed? So that's kind of the risk burn down chart. And have those risks that could have potentially happened, have they passed and it's no longer a threat? We want to look at histograms. This would just be a bar chart of how many, you know, errors and bugs we have, and then any risk summaries that will end up in your risk report. So again, everything is designed to make stakeholders take action, become aware and take action. And for the exam, as a project manager, you are in a strong matrix environment. You have 200 resources. You have a year-long project with $1 million budget. That's kind of the average project PMI says, because we have some super projects out there. So the average project takes a year, requires 200 people, costs $1 million. And you're in a strong matrix environment, and you're going to be assertive. Any answer you take, I'm not just going to present a document to a stakeholder. I'm going to present a document to a stakeholder and get their buy-in, right? I'm going to present to an executive and get sign-off. Whatever it may be, make sure you pick the answer that's taking the most action. And that's the same thing what we're doing here. In this case, we want to take action that's designed to make sure that people either take action or become aware. So change requests are straightforward. That's one of the ways, right? That's an output here. And we're going to either modify our baseline, which is the scope, schedule, budget, or the project plans, which are our approach. And there we see it on the bottom, project management documents and plans. We can update those. And change requests for corrective. Please fix this deliverable. Preventative. Please change the process so we don't get any more future deliverables that are defective or defect repairs, which is a corrective action. Now, work performance information is a key input. Remember, this is an output from all of those other processes in the monitoring controlling process group. So with the exception of this one, all of those other processes take data in and spit information out. That information becomes an input to this one process, and the output is a work performance report. So in this input for this process, we want to see how are we doing in scope, schedule, budget, quality. How are our contractors doing? Results compared against the project plan. Actually, that key point on the bottom, work performance data is transformed into work performance information, right? Data from the execution, transformed into information by comparing the data against the plan to determine how the project's performing. And then we take that information as an input to create a report. Okay, so, whoops. All right, other inputs will be the plans themselves, the documents, any contracts, any agreements, just for monitoring, controlling the work. In this case, it's going to be your third-party labor is really what you're focusing on. And then you're going to analyze that data. You're going to take those inputs, you're going to analyze the data, and you're going to make some decisions. So we can do earned value analysis. We'll see that tonight. What is the line doing? Is it going up or down? How off are we? What is the real root cause of these reasons? Why are we really behind? Why are we really over budget? And then alternative and cost benefit analysis, we'll look at that. What if we did something different? How much would it cost and what would it give us? That's the cost benefit analysis. And that's it for that process. Any questions?
Can we go over that, the work performance data as, and hold on, I'm
Yes.
like just trying to
I gotta show you that document.
make that stick. Hold on, I
Document
think
that I'm
I
gonna
have,
give you. No, you lost that one earlier tonight. I don't know. It's gonna be a rough night. The boy doesn't have a salamander.
oh no.
Yep, I hear it. It's gonna be a rough night. With that, you lost it somewhere. I feel bad because I was playing. We were like throwing animals back and forth at each other today.
Oh, like a real salamander?
No. It's a stuffed animal. It's like a
Oh,
stuffed
okay.
animal. But we were throwing toys at each other, like little stuffed animals back. We were having a war earlier, and now he can't find it. So like I kind of
Oh
feel
no.
responsible. No.
Okay, so let me just see if I have this right. So
Okay.
Work performance data is an input to all the processes in monitoring and controlling, except for monitor and control project work.
Mm-hmm.
And then an output from all of those processes mentioned gives you work performance information, and that's an input to monitoring and controlling project work.
Yep.
And work performance reports is an output of monitoring and controlling project work as an output, but becomes an input to manage communications.
Yep.
Am I missing something?
And the output to manage communications is a it's a project communication.
Okay.
What is
Okay.
wrong with my piece here? Okay, so here's the flow of deliverables. All right, so I'll use that for later. We're going to see that. And then let me get data becoming information, becoming a report, which is here. Okay, let me share this. Okay. Oh, it's going to get rough. I'm going to close my door. Okay. Where is it? Where's my picture? Here we go. No, that's not what I want to share. Let's just share the desktop. One. Okay. Okay, so you said it right, but here's the picture, and I will send this to you. And I have a nice PDF version of it somewhere. I'll show you this one later, but I have a PDF version of it like this. But this is from my board in my classroom. So all the processes are in red, the names of the processes. The outputs are in blue, and then you see the inputs are in green. So direct and manage project work, only place we get data, only process we get data as an output. That becomes an input to all of the controlling processes with the exception of monitor and control project work, right? That data becomes an input. The output is work performance information. That becomes an input to monitor and control project work. And the output's work performance report, the only place that we get a work performance report. Right? And that becomes an input to manage communications. And the output of that becomes a project communication, something that you've either sent to somebody in an email, you've posted it somewhere on Confluence or Slack or something like that.
Okay. I think I get it now.
All right.
Yeah.
Team members do work and they give you this.
Yep.
You sit at your desk. They give you this. When they give this to you, you start parsing it out into scope. Here's how much we've completed. Schedule. Here's how far we are. Cost. Here how many hours we burned. All right. Defect rate. And then you take that and then produce some sort of chart or graph. And then you take that chart or graph and then you post it at places. You email it to people. You meet with people and discuss it, and it becomes a project communication.
Got it. Okay, that makes perfect sense.
So I will send hopefully a prettier version of this. It's my old board too. Gosh, this is taking me back. I used to have, you see these little black lines.
Yeah.
There's some tape. And so, the dry erase marker would always get caught in those sections when you would rub it off. But now we got a nice new one in our classroom that I haven't been in months.
Oh man.
So sad. So sad. Okay. Let's change the share. Let's share the keynote. And then where's my keynote? And let's play. Oh, what happened? Okay, keynote, share. You seeing the right thing?
No, I see the 2 slides.
Okay. Then let's new share. Let's share desktop one. Good now?
Yep, looks good.
Okay. All right, so that's that data deliverable, data information report communication. That's that flow, and I'll send that to you.
Perfect.
All right, so now, one second, before we start this, let me grab my tea. All right. Now we're going to perform integrated change control. And all this really means is a fancy term from PMI that says, all right, you got a plan and you're going to make some change to your plan, whether it's your approach, whether it's your deliverables, whether it's your documents, or whether it's your OPAs. Those are the 4 things we can make changes to, by the way, on a project: the deliverables themselves, documents, the plan, or our organizational process assets. Sure, we can update the environment, but that's not really a change or a change request that would do that. All right. So those are the 4 things that we can change. So what this is saying is you had a plan and you're going to make some change. Please go get it approved. Please go let everybody know what that thing is, and then go update all your documents so that everybody knows what the new change is. All right. So this is a process that's owned by the project manager. The project manager will say, do we need a change control board? Do we need a steering committee? Do we need, some whatever term that your company uses, but do we need these people in order to help us achieve our goals? And you'll articulate what changes need to happen, what the impact will be, and then you'll communicate those changes to folks. So there's multiple processes that do that create a change in your organization. PMI has a change process that you need to memorize, and it's coming soon. But first, let's look at the ITTOs. So our approved change request, that's the goal that we're trying to get here. If the change request does not get approved, it dies in a change log, right? So we get these change requests as inputs, and then they either become approved or they die in the change log cemetery. And we'll use these tools and take these techniques in order to create approved change requests based on these inputs. So it's either going to be instructions back on to do something different, like back to the team, or updates to our approach and how we're doing stuff, or the deliverables themselves may be rejected, whether they're for the quality issues, which means we found it internally, or they don't get validated, they don't get accepted, and that happens externally. Okay. And so, and I know it sounds kind of weird. It's like, well, we still have it. We tested it and we have it. And now the client's seeing it. Isn't it still in our hands? But it's like, no, once you've tested something, you sort of released it. It's almost like a test drive. I have now given this client the card to go get in and go make sure that they like it. And at that point, if they bring anything back, it has been in their hands. That's an external failure. All right. So approved change requests are implemented by the direct and managed project work. And in fact, let me show you that slide in a second. Right now, let me show you the slide of how change requests become an input into this. So let me stop the share, and then let's find this guy, and then let's share this PDF document here. Okay. So we direct and manage a team, and they produce deliverables. Okay. Those deliverables then get tested via quality control. And if they pass our internal test, then it becomes a verified deliverable. That we either take them one by one or all at once over to the client to validate and accept, and then it becomes an accepted deliverable. However, we may produce a deliverable and we test and inspect it, and it's like, oh, doesn't meet its requirements. Please make a change. And we make a change request. In this essence, we don't even really need to ask the client, because we need to make sure that our products, conform to the requirements. So we'll just go ahead and make the change. We'll perform integrated change control. That approved change now becomes an input to direct and manage a team. Then we go ahead and rework that deliverable, or we scrap it and then produce a new one. But either way, we go and test it again. And if it does not make it, we'll keep going through the cycle until we do. Follow me so far? Mm-hmm. Okay. And now, assuming it passes, now the client gets to look at it. And the client may say, you know what? You built me you built the thing right. You just didn't build me the right thing. I need something different. And then they'll request a change. So the client is the last opportunity for that deliverable to be changed. And if so, they'll approve that change request for the money and time to do it. We'll perform integrated change request. We'll go get it approved. The approved change becomes an input to direct and manage a team. We'll either rework or scrap and reproduce the deliverable. We'll test it again. Assuming it passes, that verified deliverable goes back to the client, the sponsor, the customer, whatever term we're using, and they will either accept it or request another change. And that is the complete flow of deliverables throughout the project lifecycle. So I will send this to you as well. Go back. Okay, so that's approved change requests. Those are outputs that become an input to direct and manage the team so that they can rework or reproduce that deliverable. All right. We also take, we also update our plans and our documents based on any changes, and that, you know, just sort of goes hand in hand. Now for inputs, we also gotta look at the change request. All right. That's the most important piece. Yeah, we look at approved change request as an output, but for an input, we need the change request itself. We need to get that change request. We need to get the plans and the documents. We need to think about EEFs and OPAs. EEFs in this case, what's our organizational framework for making a change? For instance, in your company, do you guys have like a steering committee or a change control board?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's the exec team.
Exec team, right?
Mhm.
And then for client changes, what is it? Just like an email? You know, if you want to change, like sign my change form. If you're implementing your software into my company's environment, and I want to make a change, either to you know, without knowing your product, either to like the amount of memory or bandwidth or compute power that it's going to use or provide me or something like that, you know, what would that process look like?
Yeah, sometimes it could just be a simple email, but other times it might need to be like an amendment to the order form.
And who determines like if it needs to be an amendment?
We have like, you know, our policies in place, but it's like different people have to work with the customer. So sales has to work with them to understand that change, and then it gets like rerouted to our team, to my team.
Right. So, and that's I love how companies do that. You know, that's not a real process. That's the salespeople saying, wait, before you make a change, hold it. What are you changing? Because that's going to affect my commission. Okay, that's usually how that works. Like, give me a shot to go back and convince this person to not make a change, right? But see, now that's your OPA. That's your organization's assets, their process, and that process is an asset over the organization because that process allows everybody to be happy. It allows the customer to be happy. It allows the engineering team to be happy. It allows the sales folks to be happy. All right. So that's your OPA, and that's how you all manage changes. All right. So that's why that's an input there. And then we will analyze those change. Right. You'll go in and you'll look at the alternatives and the cost benefit analysis, and you'll say, oh, yeah, we can do this. Nope, we can't. Or, oh, this needs a whole different process. You guys need to sign this document. We're gonna have to get the account manager involved, aka sales, all that stuff, right? So we'll analyze those things, and then we'll use that information to drive some decision making. All right. So in this case, either vote, right, or one person makes the decision, or there's the multi-criteria decision analysis, right? That's that, you know, different options, double check, pick the right one. Okay, now every change request must either be approved, deferred, or rejected by the responsible individual or the CCB. So if they get approved, they become an approved change request. If they're deferred, they stay in the change log. If they're rejected, they stay in the change log with the term rejected next to it. Now, tools and techniques. We have changes to the project configuration, documents, deliverables, and baselines, aka the plan. All right, so the 4 things that we can do, right? Our documents, the plan, the deliverables themselves, or OPAs. We have to manage those things. And so we have change control and configuration control. Now, we haven't seen plan change management. Have you noticed that? There's no process called plan change management. There's no process called plan configuration management. These are the only 2 subsidiary plans that are born out of the process develop project management plan, right? Everything else, you have plan scope where you get scope and requirements, then plan, time and cost, quality, resources, communication, risk, procurement, stakeholder engagement. But change management and configuration management are born out of the project management plan. Remember that.
Okay.
Now there's 8 steps. There's 8 steps not on the slides that I want you to know that PMI, like memorize these 8 steps. Let me see where I have the most white space here. I guess it doesn't matter. So first step. If you had to guess what PMI's first step, what do you think it would be?
First step for what? Sorry about that.
For making changes.
Review the change request.
First thing they want you to do. Somebody comes to you with the change. Why? No, we don't need a change. Why? There's something called the 5 whys. Have you heard of that?
No.
5 whys is exactly what it sounds like. You ask someone why 5 times. So you do this, you just didn't have a term for it. And a lot of times people can't get to the 5th. They usually get to the 3rd and we give up. So we should just call it the 3 whys, but it's the 5 whys is the official term for it. So think about kids. And when your kid asks you something, you say why, and they give an answer, you say why again. They give an answer, you say why a 3rd time. And usually then they get stuck. And so then okay, good. Go off, figure that out, and then come back another time. We can do the same thing with our team members and our teammates, right? When they come and request for a change, CJ, we need to change the connection to this provider database. Why? Because this particular field is not compatible. Why? Because this field is coming from another application that wasn't on the list. Why? Because this person wanted to make sure that their work would be included. Oh, well, this person's not even part of this. No. All right. That's kind of the idea. It's like, it's a why. And usually the exam will give you examples of like, somebody comes with you for your project manager for XY company. Your project lead comes to you with what they believe to be is a necessary change. You ask why, and they note that most of the team members will not be in attendance on Friday. And you ask, well, why would they not be in attendance? And they say that, well, because there's a big event happening. And you say, well, what big event's happening? You say, it's the World Cup. And you say, oh, okay, we need to make a change because you guys like to watch soccer, right? So that's kind of the idea, is like the 5 whys is why are we making this change if we can? The first thing PMI wants us to do, prevent the change. Okay. Then if we can't prevent the change, then they want us to identify the change, right? Identify the change with root cause analysis. So we're going to go and we're going to ID the change. And in this sense, when I say root cause, we're going to use a cause and effect diagram, and we're going to find out whatever reasoning that we're wanting to change, what's the real change? Why is it happening? What's the root cause, so that way we can fix the thing, all right? We don't want to just fix the symptom. I have shortness of breath. Okay, I can't fix my lungs. There's something else happening. Oh, I have some virus that's causing inflammation. Okay, let's get rid of the virus. Let's change that. All right, so that's kind of the idea. Then, that was probably a very good example since we have COVID going on right now. Right? Then we want to analyze the impact. Okay. We can't just go to the stakeholders and say, we got to make a change. We need to be able to go to them and say, well, this change is going to cost you 1% of the budget and take an additional 10 days, but there will be no additional risk included, right? We got to go and add something. Now, the exam usually gives you 1. They usually give you 2 exactly, but they only have to give you 1. Give you 1 of either scope, schedule, budget, or risk. Somewhere, somebody has to come to you with your project manager for XYZ company. Your team comes to you with what they believe to be as a major change. They note that the change will decrease the risk, but will add an additional 10% to the budget. What should the project manager do next? A, prevent the change. B, identify the change. C, analyze the impact. D, issue the request. Well, in that case, since the impact has already been analyzed, you go ahead and issue the request. And by the way, for the exam, you take everything at face value. So in real life, if somebody comes to me and says, yeah, this change is only going to take a week, well, it depends who told me that. Can I trust your work? Do you always do good work? What you say is what we get all the time? Or do you say some stuff and then half the time it's way off, right? So depending on who you are, I'm not just so inclined to take your word for it. But on the exam, you like management's working with you, not against you. You have adequate information, adequate documentation exists. It's the bright blue sky of PMI. Everything is happening perfect. So for the exam, just assume that whoever told you something, you take it at face value. It must be the truth. And so you're going to analyze the impact. The fourth thing we're going to do is actually issue the request. Now, if somebody comes to you with a change request, that's not an actual change request in PMI's terms. An actual change request is like that document that you talked about. That's going to say, okay, it's going to cost so much more and it's going to take this much more time. And are you okay with that? And they'll sign it. And usually salespeople go and do that because they have the relationship. That's the actual change request that we're going to issue. And then the fifth thing that we need to do is we need to get CCB approval or perform, literally the name of the process, perform integrated change control. Integrated change control, right? So that literally means if I've issued the request, well, it could be Friday at 3 o'clock and I issued this request, but the CCB meets every other Wednesday at 3 o'clock. So now I got to wait until the following week, Wednesday. I need to go attend that meeting and I need to go explain myself and why we need to get the change and hopefully get it approved. So that's getting the CCB approval or it performing integrated change control. That's what happens. After you do that, then you need to update your documentation to reflect the change. All right. Update your documentation to reflect the change. Heaven forbid you get hit by a bus or you quit or something else. At least it's been documented and the company can move on, right? Let's hope you never get hit by a bus. But if you do quit and you move on to greener pastures, the team can continue. Okay. Then you need to go and get stakeholder buy-in. Now that sounds weird to some people. They're like, what? Get stakeholder buy-in? What do you mean get stakeholder buy-in? You're just going to make a change and nobody's going to care? Well, it's the fact that the key stakeholders are usually the one that sits on the CCB. So they're going to be the sponsor, the people actually, footing the bill, the people who are most powerful and most interested. They're likely the ones approving the change. Now that the change has been approved and you've updated your documents, now you got to go back to the team and all the people who have no power, but they're highly interested. You got to go put something on Confluence or Slack that says, hey, this is what's happening. And, and make sure that people are in the know. The team members definitely need to be in the know, but now you got to make sure that even if they disagree with it, folks, this is what we're doing. So you get their buy-in, and then you're going to go and direct and manage the team according to the new plan. So, all right, direct and manage according to new plan. And I'm paraphrasing here in my writing, but those are your 8 steps. Prevent the change, identify the change, perform root cause analysis, analyze what the impacts are going to be to the project if you make that change, issue the request, go get approval or denial, update your documents, get buy-in from everyone, direct and manage the team according to the new change. Those are the 8 steps. You need to know this. PMI typically will give you questions centered around 3, 4, and 5. So they'll say your project manager for XYZ company, your team members come to you with what they believe to be as a major change. You note that there is no more, you note that you have no additional budget and you're already behind schedule. What should the project manager do next? A, prevent the change. B, identify the change. C, analyze the impact. Or D, issue a change request.
C.
Good. You would analyze the impact. They've already told you what the change is. You got to take it at face value. All right. Now, if they come to you and say, somebody comes to you with what they believe to be as a major change, and and they note that it's going to take X amount of days or cost X amount of money or do X to the scope or the quality, then in that sense, then you can go ahead and issue the perform integrated change control, issue the request. Excuse me. Issue the request, not perform integrated change control, issue the request. And then sometimes you get questions that say, you're a project manager for XYZ company. You have just issued a change request. What should the project manager do next? Oh, if I just issued a request, then I need to go get approval. I need to go perform integrated change control. So the questions on exam are usually centered around 3, 4, and 5. Don't ignore the other ones, but usually your questions are there. They want to make sure that you kind of know that process. And when you think about it, almost every company, regardless of what their process is, follows these steps in some manner. If you think about on your project, if your client asks you for a change, you're first going to say why, because you're going to say, do we really need a change? Is it something that we did? Like, why? And then then what's the matter? What did we do wrong? Like, why do you want to change? And you go figure out, oh, okay. And then you'll say, okay, now that we got to fix this, we didn't take this into account. Oh, it's going to add so much more time or so much more cost. Okay. And then you're going to go say, all right, folks, if you want to do this, this is what it's going to be. And you're going to give them the document and then say, hey, let us know by, next day or next morning. And the next morning, they're going to give you their approval. So that's kind of performing the integrated change control. They're going to say, okay, yeah, we're going to do this. Then you would update your documentation and say, okay, all right, so we're now going to go with this schedule. We're going to go with this budget. After you updated that document, you're going to call the rest of the team in and say, okay, this is what we're doing. This is what they said they wanted to change, and we've got to make this and we got to do that. So you're going to get their buy-in. And then moving forward from that point, you're going to direct and manage the team according to that plan. All right. So those are the 8 steps. Memorize those.
Okay.
Know those just like the functional, weak, balanced, strong matrix in projectized organizations with the pros and cons. Know that just like the cost of quality in terms of the cost of conformance and non-conformance, preventative and appraisal, internal and external failure cost. Know these 8 steps. Prevent the change, identify the change, analyze the impacts, issue the request, get CCB approval or perform integrated change control, update your documents, get buy-in, direct and manage to the new plan. All right, so I spent a lot of time because you're going to get so many questions. Remember, your exam is 31% in execution and 30% in monitor controlling, which means 61% or 122 of your questions are going to come from execution and monitor and controlling. And a big amount of them will come from change and quality. Okay. Any questions on this one?
No, I don't think so. What is the, I guess I do have a question. Is this just called the 8 steps to making a change?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And in fact, so you have a cleaner look of it. It's gonna be in like 100 something. This is in the integrated change control. Right here, perform integrated change control, and your steps are going to be on page . Oh, they don't have it in version 6. But remember, PMI reserves the right to test you on stuff not in the PMBOK. Right. So I mean, this has been in there since the beginning, and I haven't heard anybody say that they're no longer, doing the 8 steps. So they are there.
Okay, I got them.
Okay. Yeah, too bad they're not in it this time. Let's look at a version 5. Okay, case study.
Okay.
What should be John's response to Frank's changes?
C.
What portion of the project management plan must be updated if a change request is submitted, approved, and results in additional cost?
B.
Okay. And if a change request is not submitted, but the team believes there is a risk that the training manual may not be sufficient, where should this be recorded?
B.
Okay,
Oh,
so
A.
go for A. Why A?
B.
No, let me change your mind. You know, see, this question would be hard on exam because we'll have D, risk register.
Oh. Okay, I'll just leave it. Y
We did
A.
that. We did D, risk register. What's not on there, so you know that's not right.
Mm-hmm.
But you're gonna go with A. All right.
Yeah.
Boom, you got it. So C is an example of with PMI rooted in NASA, double check, measure twice, cut once. Human life is the most thing that we can risk. Usually the longest answer is the right answer. So something like that was very thorough. Yep, that's what you want to pick. But it also gave you the clue. It's a key deliverable. You got to evaluate the change. Portion of the project management plan. Now, what if it said A, project management plan, B, cost baseline, D, schedule baseline, D, communication plan? What would you choose?
Cost baseline.
Good, because you always want to use the lowest level document. Project management plan would be appropriate because the cost baseline is a part of it. But since they gave you the baseline, it's a lower level document. That's the more complete answer.
Okay.
All right. And the reason why this is in the issue log, because the people there have an issue with this, right? It's not an issue with the project or the deliverable technically that needs to be changed. This is an issue that we have. So then it would go there.
I see. Okay, that makes sense.
All right. So now validate scope and control scope. Validate scope is all about getting sign off. We want the customer to, give us their approval. That's what we're doing there. And then control scope, control schedule, control cost all go together. That's part of our earned value management. So let's look. We're really trying to get verified. We're trying to get these verified deliverables to become accepted project deliverables. All right. These deliverables get verified here from control quality, then become an input to validate scope where the output becomes an accepted deliverable. So this is the process of us getting the formal acceptance. So, the customer can accept every verified deliverable. Can be done at once. It can be done, continuously, sort of like in a drip mode. But either way, we need to get all of their sign off. And validate scope is tied to quality. PMI says that we can do control quality and validate scope at the same time. I'll give you two examples. Let's use the painting example. So if we have people come and paint this room, then I can walk into this room sight unseen and be like, you know what? I have my best crew here. And so we bring them in and when they're done, I just walk the site with the customer. I haven't even checked it yet, but my best crew is here. So while the customer's walking around, rubbing their hands, saying, oh yeah, this is matte paint, this is flat paint, satin, semi-gloss, high gloss. Oh, this is the right color. I'm in there noting, oh, you know what? The crown molding, we were going to put high gloss on there, but we only put semi-gloss. I will, get that done and we'll submit a sheet to you later, right? So that's us doing quality control at the same time as the customer's looking to validate the scope. The other example I have, the other example I have is when you do a sprint review. So you plan your sprint, you do your work, you have your daily scrum. At the end of the sprint, you go and you do a demo. And when you demo with the customer, you're demoing everything that you've built, bugs and everything. And in that sense, you're controlling quality, you're noting the product and the output and what's not meeting its requirements, and you're noting that at the same time that you're getting acceptance for the work that was completed that would be done. Okay, so that's PMI says that we can do those together at the same time. Verified deliverables are evaluated and accepted based on objective factors, meaning that it's a test case. It either is or it isn't. Validate scope is more subjective because it's the client. So when we verify, it's kind of like, okay, here, I'll give you another example. It's time for me to get a haircut. So I'll use that. At the barber, I'm going to go to the barber. Well, now I'm going to cut my own hair. But if I went to a barber, I'd sit in a chair and the barber will cut my hair. And when the barber's done, the barber's going to hand me a little mirror. If I, had long hair to get cut, I go to a hairstylist. They're going to cut my hair and they're going to hand me the mirror, right? Now that barber, that hairdresser is looking down at my head saying, did I cut her hair right? Did I style her hair right? Did I dye his hair right? Did I fade his hair right? Meanwhile, they're controlling quality. Did I do it right? Did I do it? They asked me for something. Did I, in fact, do what they asked me to do? Okay. Did I do it right? You're now looking in the mirror. Did she give me the right haircut? Did she give me the right hairstyle? Did she give me the right dye? That's very different than did you build something correctly versus did you build me the correct thing, right? So it very may well be that, I asked for a chair and I wanted it to be black and, the handles, and we should be able to move the arms. They got to go up and down. All right. So I built it correctly. I built it to spec. And now you get to sit on it and tell me, no, but this is no longer the right thing for me. You built it correctly, but it's no longer the correct thing for me. Right. So when we verify that it's built correctly. And when we validate that it's the correct thing. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So here we see the accepted deliverables is the output. That's what we're trying to get. The input is verified deliverables. Where do these come from again? What process?
Where are we looking at? Verified deliverables?
Oh, yeah, you can't see that. I need to use that. Verified deliverables. What process do we get this from again?
Control quality.
Yep. Yeah, I still call it quality control too. Yep. Control quality, though. That's what it is. All right. So that's what we're here. And then look at this. Data in, information out. Remember work performance data? Where did this come from?
Direct and manage project work.
Good. All right, so data in, information out. So we're going to see this theme moving forward. Right. So the accepted deliverables, those are the formal documentation. So sometimes it's not the deliverable itself, but it just sign off, right? Email, a checklist, initial, something like that, but something that says that we've, the customers accepted that this is done. All right. And it could be in the traceability matrix or in the requirements themselves. Now, accepting each deliverable increases the probability that the final product will be accepted. So this is really just the idea that if you don't get all the deliverables accepted, then there's a very high chance the project won't be. If you do, there's a very good chance it will be, because just because you get all the deliverables accepted, don't mean that they will accept the project itself. It's two different things. Talk about that when we get to close project. All right, another key output, the information. So if we got data as an input, here's the deliverable, here's its test case, it was produced in this manner, it meets its requirements. We take that data in, we then we let the client look at it, and then in the end, now we have information. Yep, it's been accepted. 9 out of 10 deliverables were accepted. That data now becomes information. The data of the numbers and all this raw numbers now became information. We're 90% complete here. All right. And then you can take that information and produce a report, a little graph, a little pie graph, bar chart, and then send it out as communications, right? So data in, information is a key output. We get requests for change, and we get the documents as well, right? Because if we get something signed off on, then obviously we're going to update our documents.
Mm-hmm.
Key inputs, we need the plans, we need the baseline and requirements documentation. So that way we can say, hey, Mr. Sponsor, we've completed X, and here's why. That contains all of the information that was built to spec that we put in the plan based on the charter that you both signed, the charter in the plan. Now we tested this, and here's a verified deliverable. Please sign off on it. Right. So we'll take all that information into account, including the verified deliverables. and then we'll inspect. Well, the client will. Notice how there's no testing from the client. They expect us to do that, and they expect that information to be involved, right? When we give them the where is it? Right, input, scope requirements, baseline, traceability, deliverable reports, right here. They expect that we've given them information that says, yep, this thing is up to spec, right? If we buy new tires, all we can do is look at the tires, inspect them, right? But we can't really go and test the tire for, is it going to maintain its shape and its form? We have to assume and we have to trust that the company has done that, right? So all we can really do is inspect. We can examine it. We can measure it. We can look at it, touch it, kick the tire, and then we can make the decision. Yeah, this one looks good. All right, I'll take it. Okay.
Mhm.
All right, next case study.
Okay.
Which process are the accepted deliverables produced by validate scope forwarded to as an input? It's kind of a weird question. Which processes are the accepted deliverables that come from validate scope forwarded to? Where did they come from?
Control quality.
Okay. Which process produces the verified deliverables that are used as inputs by validate scope?
D.
Okay. What type of technique did Hunter and Justine lead the sponsor through to examine and validating that the design block 3 deliverables met the acceptance criteria?
D.
B or D?
D.
D is in dog. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. I want you to read. Look at question, the second one.
Okay.
When we verify deliverable, what process is that happening?
Oh, which process produces the verified deliverable?
Okay, which process produces the deliverable?
C.
Okay, and after we direct and manage project work, what do we got to do with that deliverable? Do we just take it to the client?
It has to go through quality assurance.
Well, backwards for us in the Bay Area, we call this quality assurance, but it's really quality control.
Oh, right,
But
right.
that really means what? What does that really mean though? What are they going to do? What's that QA team going to do? Or QC for the exam?
Make sure that the product is consistent.
By doing what?
By
How are they going to
performing
make sure it's
tests.
consistent? Yep, they're going to test and inspect. That's control quality. So if that's control quality, then now hear this out. And I read it to you in a different way. So I messed you up on this first one. Which process are the accepted deliverables produced by validate scope forwarded to as an input? We haven't talked about this yet. But if you had to pick what process, if we get an accepted deliverable, now what does that become an input to? Are we going to make any changes if it's accepted?
It is going to close project.
Good. That's what it's going to do. Okay.
Okay, I think I had it backwards.
Like I read it to you backwards. It was my fault.
Okay.
It was my fault. I recognize I did that.
I think the question's just weird.
Yeah, and what we're trying to do here is write them in a way that PMI is going to do it, right? Because it's a reading comprehension exam more than anything else.
Yeah.
It's not really, are you a good project manager? It's really, here's how I want you to think of it like this. Every single question is going to be, okay, Karen, did you take your 35 contact hours? Do you know the processes? Do you know our formulas? Do you know our methodology? Can I give you a question and disguise it in all kinds of language? And then you can go and pick the process or the tool and the technique or the output that would be garnered by my question. If so, I'll give you a PMP. That's really what you're doing. You're going to go answer 200 questions that are of 140 of which are going to be written in a manner that's like, why would you say it that way? And this is backwards. All of the following except which. Why wouldn't you just say, which of the following isn't it? Right? Why would you say all of the following except which, right? So that's why it takes about 5 to 6 practice exams in order to really get used to it. Because your first 2 or 3, you're guessing on a certain amount. After a while, and you've gotten used to the language and the lingo, you're like, oh, you can't trick me anymore. So then another 3, the first 3 is just getting used to it. The next 3 is then perfecting it. So 5 to 6 practice exams is about what it takes, in order to pass this thing. So when you're done with me, that's literally your work, right? The next 1 to 2 weeks is going to be how many practice exams, how many times will you have the ability to sit down quietly and take a 4-hour exam that you could potentially complete in 2.5 hours, even 2, right? But how often are you going to get the chance to do that? You're going to need to structure your life so that way you get multiple opportunities within a week to do it. And if so, then you can pass the exam before Thanksgiving easily.
Really? That's like less than a month.
I mean, you should after 2 to 3 weeks, every week later, the information is going to start leaving your head. So 2 to 3 weeks after class is like the prime time. So after this course on Sunday, my expectation for you would be that, you start reading and reviewing through the week. You've already got some of your processes memorized, which is great. You'll start memorizing formulas. And by the following Friday and Saturday, you'll take a practice exam each day. You take one Friday, you'll take one Saturday. Now, the advantage is that we live in COVID time, so maybe you can take it during the week, right? But the idea is like if you're working and have time, you take one Saturday and Sunday. And then the following week, instead of reviewing your slides and everything I gave you, now, because you would have 3 practice exams, the one that you're going to take for the class, the 2 that you'll take the following weekend, now you can look and say, okay, the areas that I'm not scoring high in or low in, because the simulator that I gave you access to will keep all of that for you by knowledge area, by process group. Now you get to go and read the PMBOK, and you get to go and dial into that one specific area that you're struggling on. And you do that for the week, half hour a day, just reading the PMBOK in those sections, doing some flashcards, memorizing. You go back the following week, you take 2 more practice exams on Saturday and Sunday. And usually at that point, your scores shoot up and the time to take it goes down. Like, it's not linear. It's not like every time you take an exam, your score goes up right? It kind of holds steady, holds steady, holds steady. And it's like an S curve. And all of a sudden, your last couple exams, your scores shoot up. So that's what you can expect. I'll mention that to you again, you know, when we, at the end of the night, actually, let's see how far we get. And yeah, it's pretty much it. So what I
Cool.
want to do right now is we have 1 hour, and I think we can get to earned value management. Okay. So what I want to do is I want to get to control scope. Okay. Then we're going to do control schedule, because literally it's the same information. Then I'm going to give you a 5-minute break, because we're going to come back and we're going to do math in control cost. We're going to do earned value management. And there's going to be a bunch of formulas that you're going to have to learn. And so from this sense, I want to make sure that you're good. So just give a quick 5-minute break, get up, go walk around your house, maybe even go outside, do some jumping jacks, whatever, get the blood pumping, get oxygen to the brain, and then we'll come in and hit this math. So let's do the first two.
Okay.
Control scope, control schedule. All three processes are literally the same. You just don't see the earned value management until you get to control cost, but earned value management is for all three. It's for schedule, for scope, and for money. All right, so let's look at control scope. Excuse me, go all the way back. Oh, I knew it because I pressed too many times, nothing happened. So we should be here. Okay, so control scope. So it's focused on monitoring the status and making changes to the scope baseline to prevent scope creep. Now, scope creep is not that the project is growing in scope. Scope creep is that the project is growing in scope and it's growing away from the constraint of time and money that you have. All right. So if the scope grows, time and money need to grow proportionately with it. Remember that triangle, right? It's going to be 180 degrees in. So if you want more scope, then you got to give me more time or more money. One of the two, right? So any change to the scope baseline, WBS dictionary scope statement must be evaluated using a change request, because that gets signed off on as part of the plan. So here's our ITTOs. Notice how we don't have any specific outputs here. We just can either get some work performance information, data in, information out, a request for change, and updates to our approach or updates to our documents. And we're just looking at variance analysis and trend analysis here. So we'll get a summarized document that says like how much scope is left compared to what, was there, or how much the scope is shifted or changed as compared to the original. Any request for change, updates to our approach, and then updates to our documents. All right. And then we need the data. We need to know what, like the raw data from the team members of what's happening to understand if the scope is changing or not. Right. We need other documents that would have information that would identify any variance between what we're doing and what we should have done as in the plan or the baseline. So the project plans will give us standards, and then the data will give us details. How many change requests have been received? How many of those have been accepted? And then of those that have been accepted, when we changed our work, how much have been verified through quality control? How much have been validated and then accepted through validate scope? All right, so we'll take all that information into account, and then we'll look at the variance. We'll compare the baselines to actual. Where should the planned results versus actual results? We'll look at that. And if there's some threshold that we exceeded, we're over 5%, we need to go wave the white flag and tell management we're not doing so well. All right. And then trend analysis is, well, over time, the last couple of weeks, we've been trending down, 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 or we've been trending up, up, up. All right. So control scope is conducted throughout the life of the project. From the moment you get the charter signed, in fact, all of the monitoring controlling processes from the moment the charter signed have been happening. We haven't talked about them till today, but if you think about it, as you're planning a project, you're burning hours, you're using the team, you're technically executing. Therefore, you need to be able to produce reports about how much time you spent planning and how many hours you burned. And that's part of monitoring and controlling as well. Any questions on control scope?
No.
Okay. Now, control schedule is very similar in that difference here is that we'll actually get schedule forecast. You don't get scope forecast, but we'll get schedule forecast here. So here's control schedule. And now we want to monitor and maintain an accurate schedule baseline. All right. So it's really just plan and how are we doing? And, you know, do we need to make a change? And sometimes it's okay. Now we need to start reporting in weeks instead of months. We need to start reporting in days instead of weeks, or hours instead of days. All right. That's what we're looking at here. We do this throughout the entire project as well. From the moment the charter signed, we start thinking, how long did it take you to identify stakeholders and develop the plan? You can't be planning for 5 months and then deliver for 1. All right. So we got to figure that out. And earned value analysis is one way to do this, but we won't see it to the next process. In a burn down chart is another way to do it. Iteration just means, you know, a sprint or time box period. So most folks just call it a burn down chart, but it's a way for us to visually see how we are doing. So same outputs as the last process, except now we have the addition of a schedule forecast. We want to use these tools and techniques on these inputs, and we've seen most of these. So schedule compression techniques, because we're not going to see these. What are the 2 ways that we can compress the schedule?
Crash and fast track.
Which one is risky?
Fast track.
Which one doesn't cost money?
Fast track.
Good, good. All right, so we know crash isn't risky and cost you money. We have leads and lags. Do leads and lags refer to the actual activity, the predecessor activity, or the successor activity?
The predecessor activity.
Good. No, the successor. So leads and lags say something like this. I have 2 activities. Activity A starts on day 1. Activity B would start on day 3. If I'm going to employ a lead, that means I'm going to start activity B on day 2. And if I'm going to employ a lag, that means I'm going to delay activity B, and I might start it on day 5 or day 10.
Gotcha.
All right. So it always refers to the successor. Here's the predecessor. It always refers to the successor activity for leads and lags.
Got it.
Okay. Clear that. Okay. Then resource optimization techniques. What are the 2 that we can do there?
Training.
Not training, but look here, I'm giving you a hint on the screen.
I'm not catching it.
4, 8, 12. We have one resource working this much, another resource working this much.
Oh, leveling.
Yes.
Leveling and smoothing.
Okay. Which one does not care about the hard deadline? Which one will push your schedule out?
Leveling.
Okay. Which one does not care about the hard deadline?
Leveling.
Good. Leveling does not care about the hard deadline. Leveling will push it out. Smoothing cares about that hard deadline, and it will not push it out. It respects that date. Okay, so those are the 2 ways there. We can use software to do this. Critical path. Critical path. Remember the forward pass, the backwards pass. How do we find the float?
The float is something about early finish minus early start.
You can't do 2 earlies. A late finish minus late start, or late start minus early start, or late finish minus early finish.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
From the top of the box to the bottom of the box, right?
I guess bottom from the top, because if the bottom's the late, it's the late minus the early.
Okay,
So bottom minus the top. Yeah, bottom
Okay,
minus the top.
yeah, I need to work on this one.
Okay, you'll have time. You'll have time.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, Late minus early finish, so good. So that's critical path. Now we can look at some of these other ones here. So obviously we want to get information on how the schedule's doing. When we get to earned value management, we'll see schedule variance and schedule performance index, right? This is what's happened in the past. This is what's happening, all right? And we'll get some change request. We'll take the schedule management plan, the performance baselines, the data. Remember, data in, information out. We'll take all that as inputs. And then we'll use tools and techniques like this is an iteration, a burn down chart. You may have seen something like this. We're going to talk about earned value management, performance reviews, trend reviews. What is the line doing? Variance analysis. Where should we be? What's the schedule variance? And then what if scenario analysis. What if we just doubled up the team? What if we crash the schedule? What if we level the resources? What if we smooth them? What if we fast track? See, people just don't say, I'm going to play the what if scenario analysis. But when you think about that, that's something that you've done almost your entire career as a project manager. At some point or another, in every project that you've had some people and they said to them, like, well, what if we just do this? All right. We don't tend to think of that as like a real thing. But yeah, the what if scenario analysis is that's a real, tool and a technique. That throw the hypothetical in there. So we can optimize resources, we can compress schedules, we can implore leads and lags, different ways that we can also control the schedule. Critical path is another technique that we can use. Okay. So I want to take a 5-minute break, and I'm serious. I want you to get up, doesn't have to be 5 minutes. We can make it look 8:37 at 8:40, right? So I have 2 minutes and 40 seconds, right? It's 8:37 and 30 seconds. Get up, go walk around, maybe get something to drink, some water or something. But this next process is probably going to take us the rest of the night. And I want you to be fresh.
Okay.
All right. So 8:40.
I'll be back. Okay. Okay. Okay, I'm back.
All right. Okay. All right. So now we are on cost management, control cost. So our objective here is to get cost forecast specifically in this process, but because it's earned value management, we'll see scope, schedule, and budget here. All right. So we're doing a lot of, budget versus actual, and then we can forecast as well. So we are now on cost management, control cost. And this is on figuring out the total spend and the effectiveness of our spend. All right, so we're going to use earned value analysis to understand how much money we've spent versus what should we have done. And then are there any opportunities or any threats? Okay, and then this is performed throughout the entire project as well. And it's going to generate work performance information, which are really the, forecast is a type of work performance information. Variances, that's work performance information. Performance indexes, performance information, right? So and it has the word performance in it. So that's what we'll get. We may get some requests for change as well. So you can see data, again, how data becomes information, right? You don't always use earned value analysis, but again, your team members give you information and then you either analyze it yourself for the variance, the trend. Do we have enough in terms of, looking at risk, enough time, enough money? But data becomes information.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see the two complete performance index, TCPI. That's another formula within earned value management. So we'll see that one as well. And then, of course, we can use software to do this, right? So the outputs here, we're trying to get a cost variance, a cost performance index, estimate at completion, variance at completion, two complete performance index. We'll show you a chart that has all these spelled out. But this is one of the times on the exam that you need to know the acronyms. PMI spells everything else out. The only other time, and I failed to mention this to you the other day, but in the contract types, when we're in planned procurements, and we had the fixed price contracts. So you have FFP, firm fixed price, FPIF, fixed price incentive fee, and then FPEPA, fixed price with economic price adjustment. And then you had the cost reimbursables. You had the CCPC, cost plus percentage cost. You had CPIF, cost plus incentive fee. So notice how the CP is always cost plus. The CPAF, cost plus award fee. The incentive fees are objectives, KPIs within the contract that let me know what I must do to hit the incentives. Award fee, very subjective. I won't know, right? And then you have, did I name them all? Cost percentage of cost of incentive fee, cost plus award fee, cost plus fixed fee, CPFF, and then the cost plus fixed fee, right? You pay I'm going to pay a fixed fee for the material, for the labor, and then I'm going to pay for the materials myself, right? Whatever that cost is, right? So you need to know those acronyms, T&M, time and materials. So besides that, here is the other section that you need to know, right? And again, we'll see all these, but you need to know the acronyms there. So we'll take inputs, we'll take our management plan, right? It'll actually tell us if we should use earned value management, right? We'll look at the cost performance baseline because that's going to be our standard. Any funding requirements. And then we get to earned value management. We get to earned value management, and that's where it integrates scope, schedule, and cost to answer the question. So earned value management is a forecasting tool, okay? It's a forecasting tool that tells you where you are at a specific moment in time. So today, using earned value management, we may be behind schedule and over budget. And tomorrow, when work is completed, we may be ahead of schedule and under budget, right? So earned value management is a snapshot in time. It does not tell you what the project is actually going to end up looking like. It just tells you that based on the data today, and if things stay the exact same way they are, this is what it will look like. If things change a little bit different, there's 4 ways to get it. And so that kind of gives you 4 different values, sort of like, well, all the stuff that happened in the past is an anomaly. That stuff's not going to happen anymore. Work will continue on. Here's what it looks like. Or nope, you're going to continue to burn money the same rate that you have, good or bad. So this is what it'll look like. Or the time that you're delivering is also going to affect your spend. And that's a 4th value. Or We have no idea. So let's take the money we spent today and let's add it to our bottom up estimate. Let's bottom up estimate all the remaining costs. Yeah, we know it's expensive. Yeah, we know it takes the longest, but it'll be accurate. Let's add it to the money we spent, and then let's get an estimate that way. So those are the 4 ways that you can get it. We'll look at each of those formulas in a second, but that's the idea. It is a forecasting tool, and it takes a snapshot in time. Okay. And then we can analyze it against, any trends, any forecasts, any reserves. So you're gonna need to memorize these terms and the acronym. So BAC, budget at completion. Now that sounds weird, budget at completion. This is your initial estimate. This is when you first scoped out this project and you thought what it was gonna cost. You said at completion, upon completion of this project, this is how much money we will spend. That's your budget at completion. So, well, let me stop. Let me go through the 4 and then we'll use an example. Planned value says this is where we should be based on the plan. All right. So however many months in, we should have so much deliverables complete, and we should have spent so much money, and we should have earned so much values in those deliverables being completed. Earned value says the work that you've completed, what is it worth? All right, you've done an implementation. If the implementation's $100,000 and you've done 40% of the implementation, you've earned $40,000 worth of value. All right. So that's the idea. And then the actual cost is the amount of money you spend. So I'm going to use an internal. I'm just going to make up an example, and I use the same one. Usually I use websites. This actually would be very applicable to you because it's almost the same as an implementation in terms of like building a website. We're going to implement a new website into your production environment. Okay. So we have 12 websites that we're going to build. All right. Here's our sample. I'm drawing a blank. Here's our sample question or our sample data. We are going to build 12 websites in a year, and we're going to do it for $12,000. So earned value management makes scope, schedule, budget all the same. So if I'm going to build 12 websites, that's my scope. All right. I'm going to do it in 1 year. That equals 12 months. That's my schedule or my time. And my cost, I'm going to do it for $12,000. All right. This would technically be then my budget at completion. All right. This $12,000 would be my BAC. Okay. So if I'm going to build 12 websites in a year for $12,000, that means that one website scope is equal to 1 month's worth of work time or $1,000 budget. Now in real life or in a practical application of project management, if you're building 12 websites, one of those websites might be worth $9,000 and the other 11 might total up to 3. But for the exam, earned value management, all work items carry equal weight. So that makes it really easy because it's not a math exercise. They're not trying to test you on the math. They're trying to test you on your handle of the methodology. Do you know the formula and how to use it? Okay. So one website equals 1 month equals $1,000 worth of work. All right. Scope, time, and cost. Okay. So randomly, Carvin, how much money have we spent? Just throw a number out there.
$5,000.
So our actual cost, so we spent $5,000. Okay. And randomly, how many websites have we completed?
4.
We've completed 4 websites. Okay. Now we are in October and Saturday's the 31st. So it's going to be the end of October. So then our planned value, if we're going to do one website, if we're going to do 12 websites in a year, how many websites should we have done by the 31st?
10.
10. So we would have $10,000 worth of value. And our budget at completion, well, they gave us that $12,000 to start. Okay. $12,000 to do this. So planned value is $10,000 or 10 months or 10 websites. we've earned $4,000 worth of value, or 4 months worth of work, or 4 websites, and we spent $5,000 to do it. Okay. So based on these numbers in green, are we over budget or under budget?
Over budget.
By how much?
I don't know.
That's okay. That's okay. Are we ahead of schedule or behind schedule?
We're behind schedule.
By how much?
What was 4,000 again?
See, I did that on purpose because the exam is going to do that. That's 4
Okay.
websites, because if each website's worth $1,000 for 4 months worth of work, $4,000 is the same as 4 websites. So we've got 4 websites done. How many should we have done at this moment?
10 websites.
10 websites. So are we ahead of schedule or behind schedule?
We're behind schedule
By how much?
by
By how many websites?
by 8 websites.
By 4. So I understand you're looking at the 12. That's okay. So now let me explain. And that's okay. This is the rite of passage. Like, you have to sort of get the wrong ones out the way so you get the right ones, right? Okay. So we plan to have 12 websites done in a year for 12 grand. So every month we should complete a website, and it should cost us $1,000 to do it. And that website's going to be worth $1,000 in value. So at the end of October, we plan to have 10 websites done, or 10 months of work, or $10,000 worth of value. But we've got 4 websites done. So we are therefore behind schedule by 6 months of work, which is in time. We're 6 months behind schedule, or we're 6 websites behind schedule in scope, or we're $6,000 of value behind schedule. We should have earned $10,000 of value because we should have completed 10 websites in 10 months, but we've only earned $4,000 in value. We've only completed 4 websites.
I see.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're over budget by $1,000, right? Yes, the budget at completion is 12,000, but that's not saying that 12,000 is all we're going to spend. It's saying that when we first planned it, that's what we thought we were going to spend. But good luck planning a project that gives you the exact spending time that you had, right? So therefore, we plan to have 10 websites for $10,000. We only got 4. And then we spent $5,000 to do it. So we're behind schedule by 6 websites, and we're over budget by 1 website, or by $1,000, or by a month's worth of work.
Mm-hmm.
Now, again, this is a snapshot in time. Perhaps we had 10,000. Perhaps we did 10 websites. Perhaps we worked really fast and we were super efficient. We did it for only $5 grand. We were like, oh man, we're going to make a bunch of money. 12 grand to build these websites, and it's looking like we're going to build it for 6 grand. We're going to make money, right? But then maybe there was a power outage and we didn't have redundant storage. And when we tried to recover our data, we were only able to recover 4 websites, and the other 6 are lost. And so now in 10 months, we only have 4 websites done, and we've spent $5,000 because maybe we only spent $4,000 to get those 10 websites. And then we spent $1,000 trying to remediate the work and trying to recover the data. And then that didn't work. So now at the end, here we are, we spent $5 grand. We've got 4 websites completed, and 10 months have already passed. So we're behind schedule and we're over budget by $1,000. That does not mean that we cannot still finish the project, that we still can't complete 8 more websites, and that we can't do it for, let's say, $7,000, right? Because that's what we have less. It doesn't say that we can't do that. It just says that where you stand today, you are over budget and behind schedule. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. I see.
So it's not telling you what you can do. It's just telling you where you are at. All right. So it's a snapshot in time.
Got it.
So here's a practical example. So you have a project's been initiated to paint 4 walls, and the work is to be completed in 4 days. So 4 walls, scope. The work's completed in 4 days, schedule. And the planned cost to completing each wall is $100. There goes your budget. So if we plan to do 4 walls in 4 days and each wall costs $100, what would be my budget at completion?
$400.
$400. And we see that there, right? We would expect that in the end, we're going to produce 4 walls in 4 days at $100 a wall. So we're going to do 400. Now our planned value is 300. So that tells us that what day are we in? If we plan to have $300 worth of value, how many days have passed?
3
And
days.
it tells you 3. We plan to have 3. 3 days must have passed, and we plan to have 3 at this point. And we've earned 2.5 walls. All right, so we've done 2.5 walls, and then we spent 325 to do it. So now we spent more money than we've earned in value, and we've earned less value than we plan to have. So therefore, we are behind schedule. And if we spent more money than we've earned, we are over budget. So let me just stop there and see if that resonates.
That makes sense. It's just that I'm just learning these terms and how they relate to each other. So I think, can you repeat that last thing you said, like how they
Sure.
interrelate?
So we said, okay, we're going to do 4 walls in 4 days, $100 a wall. We should spend $400 when it's all said and done. So here's our budget at completion of this project should be 400.
Mm-hmm.
And 3 days have passed. So we plan to have 3 walls done, or 3 days of work, or $300 worth of value. But we've only earned 2.5 walls, or $250 of value, or 2.5 days of work is all we've earned. And we've spent $325 to get $250 worth of value. So therefore, we're over budget by what? $75? We spent $75 more than we've earned in value. And then we've earned less value than we plan to have. So we are behind schedule by $50 or a half a wall or a half a day. And we are over budget by $75 or by 3/4 days or by 3/4 of a wall.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So now schedule analysis is where we take earned value minus planned value. And then schedule performance index is where we take earned value divided by planned value. Earned value is king. We'll see that. And just to show you, cost variance, we do earned value minus actual cost, or earned value divided by actual cost. Earned value is king. It's always first. So when you're memorizing these formulas, how much money did I earn versus how much money did I plan to have? Or how much value, sorry, not money. How much value did I earn, right? How much of the implementation have we completed versus how much of this implementation should we have completed? So if we go back here, we're going to implement 4 doors in 4 days for $100 each, like in labor, right? That's what it's costing our team members to do. And we plan to have 3 doors implemented. However, we only have earned 2.5 of those, and we've spent $325 to do it. So if I take the value that I've earned, 250, minus what I plan to have, right? Was it 250? Yep, 250 minus what I plan to have, 300. Then I am behind schedule, because if I do 250 minus 300, that's going to give me a negative value. And negative tells me that I'm behind schedule. So I'm behind schedule by a half a day or a half a wall or $50. Okay. If it's positive, if it's 0, that's great. We're master planners and we're right on point. If it's anything above 0, even 0.000001, that's still positive. That means we are ahead of schedule. So positive number is good, negative number is bad. Okay. Then if I take my earned value and I divide it by my planned value, so if I take my 250 and I divide it by my 300, then I'm going to get 5/6. 5/6 is less than 1, and you see that there. So SPI less than 1, that means that we are going slower than we planned. If we were higher than 1, then we're going faster than we planned. So this is a tail light metric, the variance. That's in the past. That's in the past. Schedule performance index, this is what's happening. So it's in the past. We're half a wall behind schedule. That's in the past. There's nothing we can do about that. Currently, we're performing 5 out of 6. We plan to get 6 activities done, and we're completing 5. We're working at a 5 out of 6 pace. I don't know what that would be in percentages. It's like, I don't know, 85% or something like that. So that's how we're doing so far. All right. This is current This is past. All right, so make a note of that. The variances are in the past. The performance indexes are current. Okay. So here's the next example here as we see, right? 250 minus 300, negative 50. Negative indicates we're behind. And then 250 divided by 300 is 0.83. Okay, I was close. So 0.83 means that we're working less. So like SPI of 0.83, we're 83% of the speed that we should be, right? We're not quite yet at full speed. We're working at 83%. So we're a little slow right now. We're slow by about 17%. All right, so the variance in the past and the performance index is current, right? The future will be the forecast. We'll see those in a second. All right, so you got the past, current, future. Past is the variance. Current is the performance index. Now, cost is the same thing. Cost is going to tell us if we're ahead of schedule or behind, ahead of under budget, which is really ahead, or over budget. Right? So in this case, again, earned value is king. As you're memorizing these formulas, always put earned value first. It'll help you memorize it. EV minus PV, planned value. EV minus AC, actual cost. So in this case, we earn 250 minus our 325, and we're going to get negative 75. Okay, that means that we spent $75 more than we've earned in value. So we're over budget by 75. Anything negative is over budget. Anything positive is under budget. Okay. And then we take that same 250 and we divide by the 325. Well, I don't know what that is. That's 25 divided by 32.5. 5 goes into 32.6. It's still like 5 or 6 point something. So I don't know. This is like 79% or something like that, right? So a 0.79 CPI, I'm guessing. Let me look on the next slide. 0.77 CPI says that for every dollar that we spend, we are earning 77 cents in value. That's bad. That means that's in the industry, not for the exam, but in the industry, we call that the burn rate. So it says for every dollar you spend, you're burning 13 cents and you're getting you're burning 23 cents and you're getting 77 cents in your pocket. That's not good. Everybody wants to have a 2.0 markup or the margin, right? So if you think about your job and implementations, it's like the quicker that you're able to get the team to complete with the least amount of errors and the customer's happy, then the better the company performs, which means overall better financially for everybody in the company, okay? So in this sense, you want to have a CPI of like 2.0. You want to spend $1 and make 2. Pocket $1, pay the $1 back, all right? If you're the company like Apple, you have a CPI of like 6. You spend $1 and you make 6, right? You make a lot of cash, right? Most companies are happy with a 2.0. I want to double my money. I want to spend $1. I want to make 2. I want to pay back the $1 I had, and I want to pocket the $1 that I have, right? So that's the idea. Anything negative says that we're over budget for the variance, because that's in the past. And anything less than 1 says that we have cost overruns. We are earning less value than we're spending, all right? If we have a CPI of greater than 1, that means that we're super efficient. We are earning more value than we are spending. And if we have a CPI right at 1, then it means that our project is going exactly to plan. We're spending money and we're earning an equal amount of value for it. Okay. And you can always go back and use fishbone diagrams or cause and effect diagrams or Ishikawa fishbone diagrams to go and figure out why the money is going that way. So once again, you have the past, the variance in the past, and you have the performance index as the current, right? And then we're going to see the forecast is in the future, right? So again, CPI is current. That's what's happening. You have the variance that's in the past that's already happened. And now we're going to see the future, what we think will happen. And these are the forecast, right? So we can forecast based on how we are doing. Right? We already know what's happened in the past. We know the variance. So if we look at how we are doing, which is the performance index, cost, or schedule, then we can come up with some sort of estimate. So in this case, we look at the money, the estimate at completion, right? That's the total cost when it's all said and done. There is also an estimate to complete, an ETC. Let's talk about those right now. Estimate to complete. So so we have the budget at completion that says we plan a project in 12 websites in a year, $1,000, right? And then we have an estimate at completion that says, well, but you had a power outage and you lost 6 of your websites. You spent $1,000 remediating it. That's $5,000. Moving forward, it's going to cost you $1,000 to do every single website. You've now have 8 websites left to go. You're going to spend $8,000 to do it. You're going to add that back to the $5,000 you've already spent, which means that your estimate at completion, when it's all said and done, is going to be $13,000, right? That would be one way to do it, okay? That is that formula I just gave you, or just that scenario, that matches this formula here, okay? Now, when you see this formula from PMI on the exam, because you need to memorize these 3 formulas, and now you need to know, well, which formula do I use and when, okay? Word for word, it's going to tell you all work will be performed at the budgeted rate, right? They will say the variances are atypical. Those variances are atypical. That's the other word. Word for word on the exam, it's going to use one of these 2 phrases, and that's going to help you to remember that so it's an anomaly. We're not going to have another power outage and lose 6 websites. All future work will be accomplished at the original budgeted rate of $1,000 per website. Therefore, our estimate at completion is going to equal the money we spent to date, $5,000, plus our budget of completion of $12,000 minus our earned value of 4. 12,000 minus 4 equals 8, plus the 5 that we spent gives me a $13,000 EAC. You follow that one so far?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The second formula says, well, your spend will continue. Your variances are typical. I don't need to write variances in this one. For this one, they'll either say work will be continued to perform at the rate, or they'll say your variances are typical. All right. So you had atypical variances, and then you have a typical variance. And by variance, they're really talking about cost because it's the most important. Because, by the way, CPI is the most important earned value management metric. I'll come back to that, but that might be a question on the exam because everybody wants to know about the money. All right. It's going to take you longer. It's going to cost you money. You're going to add scope. It's going to cost you money. So CPI becomes the most important earned value management metric. So they will say your cost variances are typical. So that means that, well, while you may not have another power outage and lose 6 websites, you will continue to build 10 websites for only $5,000. So in this sense, at that point, well, basically we spent $5,000 to get 4 though, right? Because we lost 6, right? So now we'll say, okay, if that's the case, that means it's going to cost you $10,000 to do 10 websites, or excuse me, 8 websites, right? Because if we did 4 and 5,000, if our cost variances can continue, that means another 4 is going to be another 5,000, and another 4 is going to be another 5,000. And so using that formula, our budget at completion would be $15K. You see how that one works?
Yes.
If I continue, right?
Yeah.
And the reason why there's multiple formulas is because it allows you as the project manager to tell the story and pick the right one. Only you can say, no, that was an anomaly. That thing happened, but it's not going to happen. We put fail measures in place. That's not going to happen. All work will continue. Or, well, yeah, up until this point, the rate at which we produce deliverables is going to come with the rate at the same rate at which we're spending money. So therefore, we think we're going to actually end up spending $15K instead of the 12. In this scenario with that anomaly, $13K instead of the 12. Or the third way that PMI will say, they will say that both cost and schedule performance will continue at their current rates. It's the only way they'll say that. There's not going to be any additional typical or atypical like the other formulas, right? So there's two ways they can give you. If it's typical, that means your variances will continue. If they're atypical, that means it's some anomaly. The variances will not continue, or both cost and time. So now in this sense, we're going to factor in how fast we're working. And if you have a good CPI and you're working fast, then that's going to drive your costs down, right? If you have a low CPI and you're working slow, it's going to drive your cost up. So in our scenario, we're going to take our actual cost, $5,000. That's how much we spent. Plus, we're going to take our budget at completion minus earned value. So in here, we're going to say 12K minus 4, which gives me 8. And we're going to divide that by our CPI over our SPI. And if we were to do that math, I think our CPI was, was 4 over 5, right? 0.8. And our SPI was 4 out of 10, right? We should have been there. We should have had 10 websites done. We had 4. So 4 divided by 10 is 0.4. So if we do 0.8 times 0.4, we would get 0.32. And then if we did 8,000, because 12 minus 4 is 8, 8,000 divided by 0.32, right? Anytime you take a big number and divide it by a smaller number, you get an even larger number, right?
Yeah.
8,000, I know that 8 times 3 is 24. So 8,000 divided by 0.3 is going to give me 24,000. And then whatever that 2 is, that's going to be what? 1,600. So 25,600. Add that to the actual cost that we spent of 5,000, right? And we would end up with a BAC of 30,600, 30.6K. So 3 formulas that you must remember, right? That can give you 3 different numbers. We have the anomaly, not going to happen. We lost $1,000 trying to remediate. We have the nope, your cost variances will continue. You're going to spend 15K, $5,000 to spend for every 4 websites. Or not only is it going to cost you that, but because you're working so slow, that's going to drive up your cost. And you're not going to just spend 15K, you're going to spend 30.6K. So these are the 3 formulas that you have to remember. Now, there is a 4th way that PMI has. It's not a formula. It's just a sum. They won't ask you to use it to compute because there's not enough space on the screen for them to give you all the data and then have you compute it. However, they will describe what's happening and then give you the 4 types and ask you to pick one. They'll say you're a project manager for XYZ company. You and your team are using earned value analysis in order to provide forecasts for your stakeholders to make decisions about the budget. Because of the conditions of the project, the team was forced to estimate every single task and aggregate those costs rolled up with the actual spend. Which of the following earned value management techniques are being applied? And it'll say A, budget at completion divided by CPI. B, actual cost plus budget at completion minus earned value. C, they'll give you that formula. And then D, it'll say bottom up estimate plus actual cost. And that's what you will pick, right? So for that type of question, for that 4th formula, if you will, it's a sum, not a formula. For that 4th one, they may ask you like what's happening. They'll describe a scenario and they can ask you that for any 4 of them. Or they'll ask you to compute the answer, which is what they typically do 90% of the time. And then you'll have to use one of these 3 formulas. Make sense?
Yeah, I think so.
You'll have to memorize them. It's not that big a deal, but I want you to understand like the concept of it, that like budget at completion is what we start just because we call it budget at completion. That's just like when we planned it out, that's what we said it was going to be. Estimate at completion is how much you think we will spend when it's all said and done. Okay. And there's 4 ways to get that. Either there was some anomaly and work's going to continue at the budgeted rate. Either we'll continue our spend, or we're going to factor our spend times our speed, and that's going to give us a number, or we have no idea and we're going to bottom up estimate and add it to the money we've spent already, the actual cost, and get a number, right? So
Okay.
The estimate at completion is how much we think we will spend when it's all said and done. versus the budget at completion is just what we thought it would cost when we first planned it out. Before we did any work, right? It was just all based off assumptions and, lessons learned. And that's just what we thought. We took our best guess. So that's the idea between those. We also have the ETC, estimate to complete. Now, that's the remaining spend, right? So if you have estimate at completion, which says when it's all said and done, upon completion, at the finish line, this is how much money we'll spend. We have estimate to complete, which says to get to the finish line, this is how much more money, this is how much remaining money you'll need to spend. And we can take one of the 4 estimates, we can divide by our actual cost. So if we come back here and we take our 15K minus the 5 we spent, we would have an ETC of 10K, right? Typical variances, $5,000 for every 4 websites. We completed 4, we've got 8 to go, would cost me 10K. There goes my ETC, right? If I take this 13K minus the 5K we've already spent, 8K, that's an anomaly. All future work will be accomplished at the budgeted rate. We've got 8 websites to go at 1,000 a piece. That's 8,000 plus the 5 we've spent. So ETC would be 8,000 to go. Or in this case, right, 25,000.6 to go based on that, right? So that's what the ETC is. It's just the remaining, how much more money, what's it going to take to get to the finish line.
I see.
And now we see these formulas here where we had our variances, what's happened in the past, right? We're behind budget, right? In the schedule variance, we're behind schedule. We are over budget. And now we either have the anomaly, we have the budget at completion divided by CPI. That's all work will be at the original rate. You're still going to spend that kind of money, right? You see 520 versus 400. We have it's an anomaly. That's not going to happen again. All right, in that case, we have an EAC of 520. And the ETC in this case is 195. We've got 195 to go. And you can see here the EAC was the same in both of these, oddly enough. All right, so you can get 4 EACs, and then based on the EAC that you choose, that means you can get 4 ETCs, because the ETC is dependent, the estimate to complete is dependent on which model you use to figure out what your estimate will be at completion.
I see.
Okay. So for this, you memorize the formulas. When you get to the exam, you just plug them in. And the main thing is knowing them how to use them. So the biggest piece is going to be remembering these pieces. These are typical, budget at completion divided by CPI. The anomaly, right? The variances are atypical. That's your budget at completion minus earned value, added back to your cost. Or we're going to do both, and that's where you take the formula budget at completion minus earned value divided by CPI times SPI, and then you add that number to your actual cost, and you get a figure.
Okay. Did you call that one the bottom up one?
No.
Or is that something else?
That's something else. That's not
Okay.
on here. The bottom up estimate to complete it'll just say something like this. It'll say bottom up plus actual cost. That's a little sloppy here. Bottom up with my arrow, because it's all I can do, plus actual cost. That will be that formula. They say it's not a formula, it's just a sum. So they're not going to ask you to compute this. This is just one where they may describe what the team is doing. All right, they may say you're project manager for XYZ company. You and your team are performing earned value analysis. You note that based on the current spend, the team will continue to perform at the current rate. Which of the following earned value management techniques are using? They'll give you A, B, C, or D. And in that case, you would have to pick the right one. You would have to say, oh, it's typical, or oh, it's atypical, or oh, we have no idea, or oh, we're going to combine both cost and schedule performance.
I see.
All right, but now if they just give it to you and ask you to compute it, then you just need to remember, right? The question would read something like this. You are project manager for XYZ company. And then it'll say budget at completion equals 400. Plan value equals 300, earned value equals 250, actual cost equals 325. And it'll say, your costs are expected to continue. What is the estimate at completion? Now that costs are expected to continue is the clue. And you'll say, okay, that means I got to use the budget at completion divided by CPI. That means I got to find CPI. I got to take my earned value divided by my actual cost. I got to get that percentage. I got to divide my budget at completion by that percentage and get a number. So a
Got
lot of
it.
the earned value management ones isn't just one computation. It's like you got to do 2 or 3 computations in order to get the final answer.
I see.
And oftentimes they won't give you all 4 values because it's PMI. So they'll do something like they'll give you the budget at completion, the planned value, and then they'll give you the CPI. They may give you the budget at completion, the earned value, and the CPI. And so using the CPI and the earned value, you can do backwards algebra to figure out what your actual costs are.
I see.
All right. So that's how the exam usually does it. They usually don't give you 4 figures. They usually give you, 3 figures. And in the 4th figure, you have to figure it out if that makes sense. Right.
Yeah.
You have to go back and do some algebra.
Okay. Kind of, yeah, like on the last 2 slides, working backwards from choosing the correct formula of EAC to get you that answer. I
Yes.
guess. Like, or using the clues in the words, whether it's like the typical or atypical variance.
Exactly.
Okay.
And you're going to see that. That's why you got to take 4 or 5 practice exams, right? Because you got to see enough of it. But yeah, that's exactly like you got it. That's how the exam is going to be. They're going to give you little clues within the words or whatnot, but they're going to do their best to just not give you the easiest way, right? They're going to make it the hardest for you. You got to decipher it. They're really saying, if you really know my methodology, then I could say anything and you could figure it out. I don't have to say actual cost. I could say the money you spent to date. I don't have to say earned value. I could say the work that you've completed. I don't have to say planned value. I could say, expected target. So note that the exam is not going to use the phrases that we use here. At least a question, they're going to do their best job to not use those words. They're going to use something that sounds like it. And don't worry, 1 million people have done it before you. Why not you? Okay. I'm always going to say that. Over 1 million people hold the credential now, at least as of November of last year. It's probably like 1.1 now. We usually add like 100,000 to 200,000 a year. It probably slowed down with Corona. So probably 1.1 million people now hold the PMP. So why not you? Right. A couple more. Right now, 2 complete performance index tells you how efficient must the team work if we're going to achieve the original budget at completion. So TCPI equals a cost performance index that must be maintained to meet a specific goal. And that management goal is typically money, right? So the BAC or the EAC could be the management goal, meaning at the moment, you could be in a scenario where it's looking like you're going to spend 15K and management says, well, what would it take for you guys to do it at 12? And now you got to go, well, in order for us to do that, we have a CPI of 0.8. And in order to bring that back up, we would have to work at a CPI of maybe 1.2, right? For the rest of the way to make up. So then that's what that tells you. It's like, can we actually do this? So TCPI is, it'll ask you, can you achieve the original budget or you can't? Right. So that's how you're going to know which formula to choose. Either you can achieve the original budget, maintain to complete, or you can't. And if you can't, the only difference is that instead of the BAC, you're going to use the EAC here. Right. So under our past formula, if I take the budget at completion of 12 websites, 12K minus the earned value, we earned 4. So that's 8 divided by our budget at completion, 12K minus our actual cost of 5. So that's 7. So that would be 8 over 7 or 1 1/7. And I think 1 1/7 as a percentage is like 14%, something like that. So the team would have to produce 1 1/7 websites for the cost of 1 the rest of the way in order to achieve that budget. That's what TCPI tells you. Does that make sense?
It will.
It will. But let
Yeah.
me, just in regular terms, it's sort of like this. We have a project that right now that we thought it was going to cost $12K, and the team is operating at an 80% CPI, meaning that every dollar we spend, they're only giving us 80 cents in value. And we've produced 4 deliverables for $5,000. And management says, okay, you spent $5,000. You only have $7,000 left in the budget, but you got 8 websites to go. Can you produce 8 websites for $7,000? And if you think about it, there goes the 1 1/7, 8 over 7. I got to do 8 websites for $7,000. That means that I need to do 1 1/7 websites for every $1,000. And if I do an additional 7th website for every $1,000 we spend, by the time we spend $7,000, I will have another full website, and I will complete 8 websites for the cost of $7,000. That's what TCPI tells us. Can you make it? Right. So on this one, we would only need to make up $1,000 instead of, I didn't need to do that. We only need to make up $1,000 instead of $3,000 here. So the TCPI here is going to be much smaller. It's going to say, okay, you spent, we expect to spend 12,000, but you're telling me you're going to spend 13,000. You've completed $4,000 worth. In this case, it's going to be the same thing. Can you now complete these same websites and do it for $12,000? Right. So if we're trying to achieve the original budget, then the number is going to be the same, 1 1/7. If we're trying to achieve an estimate, then that's what we use instead of the budget at completion. So now it'd be 12,000 minus the value we've earned of 4, and that gives us 8. And in this case, now we take the EAC. Let's say we use the $15,000 one. Then we use 15,000, right, minus the actual cost of 5, and we're left with 10. And so then we get 8 divided by 10, and we say, okay, 80%. And so then going back here, management would come to you and say, okay, you told us that you were going to spend $12,000. And let's say we were here. You told us you were going to spend $12,000, but it looks like you guys might spend 15. At this current rate, in order to achieve $15,000, how efficient, how effective must the team be? And you'll come up with 0.8. You'll say, you know what? We're actually okay. The team can actually burn 20 cents. The team can spend $1,000 and only build 80% of that website. And if they do that moving forward, we'll still achieve that budget of $15,000. Right. So that's what TCPI tells you. As you study this, it'll become clear, but it tells you sort of how efficient the team must work. So if I relate it to your world, it would be that, okay, we have this implementation. We are 40% complete. We should have been 50% complete, and we spent 60% of the budget. That means that we're behind schedule and over budget. So TCPI would tell me, in order for us to achieve, right, and it's not about time, but it's just to complete this project, right? We're already 20% behind. In order to complete this project with the same spend based on where we're at now, how much better do we have to be, right? How much more efficient and effective with the money? So it's not about speed. It's just, can we produce a website for $800 then instead of $1,000? And if we do that moving forward, then we'll be able to catch up. So that's what TCPI tells us.
So what's the metric? Is it just a measurement of like out of 1 or 100? Like,
typically,
what is it like? Okay, just like it's just effort. It's not okay.
And that's what you see here. If it's above 1 like this, that's harder to complete. You're now asking the team to do 1 1/7 for what they normally do 1, by the way, for which they were performing at 80%. They were giving you 80% for 1, and now you're saying, no, don't give me 80%. Give me 1 1/7. Give me 1.14%. Don't give me the 80%. I need you guys to do more than 1. That's really hard, right? Or it says, hey guys, you know what? We get to relax a little bit. It's kind of like if I look at this program and how our class is going, this is where we're at now. So control cost. So now it says, okay, we have 10 hours of this class left. Okay. So if I look at it like that, that means I have a day and 2 hours. And we have, after control cost, we have control quality, control resources, communications, risk, procurement, stakeholder engagement, and close project, right? So I have 2 more hours left because I have 8 hours plus 1. The last 8 hours is really spent 4 hours you doing an exam, 4 hours just reviewing. So can I get those last 7 processes done in 2 hours? And then based on the time that we're doing now, it's been 8 times 3 is 2 is 3 is 24. So in 22 hours, we've completed so many processes. Based on that, I either have to speed us up to achieve that 49 processes in 24 hours, which is 3 days, or if we were ahead, I can take my time and I can slow down, and still by the time we get to that 24th hour, we would have completed the 49 processes. That's what the TCPI tells us.
Okay. Okay.
Right. And so in this
Starting to get
example
that.
here, you see how because they were behind schedule and over budget, in order to achieve the original budget, they're going to have to work at a TCPI of 2. So that's really, really hard. That means that we now have to implement one website for in the same amount of, in this case, effort, right? Hours, we can call it cost, but like the same amount of man hours that we would do one. So that's what TCPI says. And it's like, is this even possible? Do we think that if we push the team really hard, that, 4 of them working 8 hours, which is 32 hours in a day, and they normally get one website done, can we get 2 websites done in 32 hours? Guys, can you guys work really, really fast and still be efficient and get this done? And so TCPI tells us if it's possible. If it's a 2, then you go back to management and say, nah, good luck. You're not going to get those guys to work, double time in the same amount of hours, right? And I don't mean double time in like what you're paying me, because you might be paying me double time because we're working over 10 hours, but am I working double time, right? That's what TCPI says is, can we do this or nah, it ain't going to happen.
I see.
So when you're trying to recall, it could be difficult to do. So what I want you to do is practice this EVM template. This is going to help you. All right. You're going to put in any 4 numbers. And then from there, right, have somebody, your husband, your kid, put some numbers like on some papers, have her pick 4 numbers and whatever number, you're writing it down. And then you do this, find your plan value, find your, find your schedule variance, your cost variance, your performance index for schedule, performance index for cost, and then do the 3 formulas. If you do this about 5 times, you got it. All right. And you can do this 5 times in 10 minutes, right? Probably take you 2 minutes of a problem each time. So put a little bit of time in, use this little template. It will help you tremendously. And you'll be able to move from there.
Okay. Cool.
All right. So methodically follow the steps. What are you asking me for? Are you asking me that my variances will continue? Are you telling me that, all future work will be accomplished at the original rate? Are you telling me that time and cost will be factored together to give me information? And then fill it in and then methodically start at the top and work down. That's all you got to do. All right. Don't overthink this.
Okay.
So here's an example. You need to widen a 10-mile section of the freeway. You got 50 million to do it in 40 weeks. And after 22 weeks, you've only completed 6 miles and you spent 32 million. That sounds like our typical Department of Transportation projects. I shouldn't say that. All right. But that's actually not bad. 10 miles, 50 million. That means each mile should cost you 5 million, right? And if I'm going to do it in 40 weeks, that means that every 4 weeks, I should get a mile done. So after 22 weeks, 4 times 5 is 20. I should have 5.5 miles done after 22 weeks. I can easily look at that. Oh, we've completed 6. I'm ahead of schedule. And if every mile is going to cost me $5 million and I've done 6, I should have spent $30 million. Oh, I'm over budget. So in this sense, I'm ahead of schedule by 0.5 mile, but I'm over budget by $2 million. So you see, it doesn't like you can be good and bad. We're working really fast, but we spent more money than we should have. Guys, slow down, quit making the errors, right? You have a little bit of time. Can you do 4.5 websites now that you got the time to do 5.5? Can you do 4.5 websites And then can you do the 4.5 websites for in this case, $18 million and not 20? All right. So that's the question that you got to ask. That's where TCPI would come in. That's where, using CPI, but that's how you got to look at this information. The first thing is that they've given us the scope. They've given us the budget at completion. They gave us the timeline. So now planned value was right here. They didn't say planned value. They said after 22 weeks. So I know that at 22 weeks, I should have, and if I just do my math, right, 5.5 miles done at 22 weeks, just by taking 40 weeks, dividing it by 10 miles, right? 4 weeks for every mile, I should have 5.5 miles done. That's my planned value in scope. If I take my planned value in time, whoops, it's 22 weeks. And if I take my planned value in money, well, then I'd say if it's 5 million for every mile and we've done 5.5, then I should have 25 plus 2, 27.5 is what we should have spent at this point. But we got 6, right? And at 5 million, it should 5 million a mile should be 30. But either way, our planned value is 22 weeks or 5.5 miles or $27.5 million, right?
Mhm.
Those 3 numbers represent the schedule because they will give you scope, schedule, budget are interchangeable. So PMI might, they might say they can give you this question. You're the project manager of a project to widen a 10-mile section. Their approved budget is 50 million and the approved schedule is 40 weeks. And instead of saying after 22 weeks, they can say after 27.5 million dollars of spend, your team completed 30 million dollars of the freeway and you spent 32 million to complete the 30 million. They can give you the entire thing in dollars, and now you got to go and decipher that 30 million's completed really meant 6 miles, right? So that's the exam will do that to you. They're not gonna just give you the numbers nice and easy. They're gonna make sure that you understand that scope, schedule, budget are interchangeable. And that makes it easy actually for this project, right? Because again, in a real freeway build in 10 miles, 2 of those miles might cost you 30 million to do, and then the other 8 only cost you the last 20, right? So for the exam, the fact that they make it all have equal weight, that makes it easy for you.
Okay.
So just use a template. You'll answer these questions. You'll be
Ooh,
good to go there.
yes.
Right.
Step by step. Perfect.
Mm-hmm. Right. And then let's just finish this up. Trend and reserve analysis. This is now you looking at the trend. Oh, well, our CPI is going down or it's going up, right? Reserve analysis. Oh, we only have this much money left and we spent so much. Are we going to be able to complete the job? Right. And so that's where you look at the S curves, and we've seen those earlier. Right. You can use reserve analysis to determine, will we actually be able to do this project? And that is that. So we will start at 9:30 on Saturday, and you can expect that we will complete control quality. So control quality will take us probably a half an hour. Control resources is a 10-minute. Monitor communications is like a 5-minute. Monitor risk is like a 10-minute. Control procurements is a 10-minute, maybe a 15-minute. So 15, 10, 25, 5, 30 plus 10, 40 plus 30. We're now at an hour and 10. And then control stakeholder engagement is like a 5-minute process. So like an hour and 15. Probably some case studies in between for you to read. So add another 15 minutes. That's an hour and a half. So we have 2 hours, and we'll likely complete this tomorrow, somewhere in the first hour, hour and a half. And so now here is the question for you. In a perfect world, we would have gotten all of these done tonight, and we would have just been done early. And then we would have the choice that either you take your exam on Friday and we meet Saturday and go over it, and then you get Sunday off. But the way it stands now is we're going to do our first 2 hours on Saturday, and then that's the end of instruction. And then at that point, the expectation is if you were in class, you would now take your exam the next 4 hours. So that's what Saturday is going to look like. We'll do for 4 hours, and then you take the exam. But totally up to you. if you want to take a break and then take the exam later in the evening, or, you want to wake up at 5 in the morning and do it on Sunday, it doesn't matter. As long as that on Sunday at, 9:30, you're ready to cover it. That's all it really counts.
Okay. Yeah, I can take the exam on Saturday during the remainder of our class time,
Okay.
I guess.
Yeah, I mean, because that's what that's for.
Yeah.
That's the 4
Okay.
hours that's left, and then we have 5 hours on Sunday, and that would be to, yeah, because we're doing 5 hours on Saturday. So if I take an hour and a half, I guess that's not giving you the full 4 hours, but we'll likely finish, right? So that's why it being broken up, it's just kind of weird, because then we have 5 hours on Sunday, but we really only need 4. So there's going to be an hour that you can take back on Saturday. So, I mean, I'll be flexible, however you want to do it, and whatever time you want to start. We'll commit to 9:30 on Saturday. And then at
Okay.
the end, we'll just check in, and you let me know, okay, I'm going to do my exam, CJ, I'm going to do the whole thing. And can we start at 9, or maybe let's start at 11 or 10, or nope, we'll just keep it at 9:30. Make that decision on Saturday, see what your schedule's like, what's going on. And we'll talk about it then.
Okay. So you said we have about 2 hours of instruction left or so. So
About
is
an
that going to be
hour and
about
a
an
half.
hour and a half? Okay. So would that be like the beginning of Saturday, and the rest of the time I could use for my practice exam?
Exactly.
Oh,
So
okay.
in a perfect world, we're going to go from 9:30 to 3. From 9:30 to 11, we do our thing. And then you
Okay.
would take a break from 11 to 11:30. And then you'd go from 11:30 to 1 to 12:30 to 1:30 to 2:30 to 3:30, right? Because you're
Yeah.
taking a break. If you didn't take the break and you just started at 11 instead of 11:30, then you would finish at 3. And that's if it takes you the full 4 hours. And then I don't expect you to do any review at that point. I would expect you then, when people come back from the class, they take the exam on Thursday from 8:30 to 12:30, then lunch is from 12:30 to 1:30. And then we usually start review somewhere around 2:15-ish, right? Because I give folks about 45 minutes you got to go through your exam, look at the questions, look at the ones you got wrong, and then you're going to want to talk about it. I'll deep dive into this on Saturday. But at that point, then we go in. So you take your exam the rest of the day Saturday, you wake up Sunday, you spend the first hour reviewing, and then we jump on the call. So that's
Okay.
what I'm saying. You'll have some flexibility if you wanna start a little later, or if you want to start sooner, whatever works for you. But think about it. And then on Saturday, let me know what you want to do.
Okay. I will think about it. I might want to start then instruction like maybe 11. I don't know.
On Sunday?
Sorry, Saturday.
Start
No.
at 11 and just do like that, because we only have about an hour and a half. So whenever you want to start, technically speaking, Saturday, we only have an hour and a half of instruction.
Okay. So
Right.
I guess I'm flexible. Like it doesn't really matter to me.
You want to start earlier?
Does that work for you?
It does.
Like
I mean,
8, like
my
8.
kids wake me up at 5:30, so
Oh my gosh.
I'm up. Yeah, they're up playing Legos, and there's no sleep in this house. So, if you want to start early, so you have the rest of the day, it's only an hour and a half. We can knock it out. So,
Okay.
I mean, we don't need to rush through it, but I mean, it's not the rest of these processes are this is the home stretch. It's the easy part.
I think that I just passed the part I was most scared of. So I think it'll be okay. So, okay, let's do earlier then. How about like 7:30 Saturday?
Okay.
Is that too early?
7:30 it is on Saturday. Yep, because then we'll be done by 9-ish, and then you have the rest of your day to, take the exam whenever it works for you.
Okay, awesome.
All right.
Sounds good.
7:30.
All right. Have a good night. Thank you, CJ. Bye.
You're welcome. Good night.